Welcome, everybody. It is November 5th, 2023, meaning that we are 1 year away to the day of the potentially most consequential Tuesday of any of our lives. The election is exactly 1 year from today, and as a result, this is the reason why the day I decided to mark the return of the Sometime Show, which will be starting over on my channel. As this episode concludes, we will redirect over to the Sometime Show, but also something that will be a little bit strange today, as people might have noticed some oddness in the title. After a call or two, I'm actually going to leave. Paulogia has gracefully offered to take over for me at that point, and you will have Matt and Paul for the rest of the episode while I prep the Sometime Show, and we will be we'll be doing the Sometime Show that way tonight. Anyway, I'm Jimmy Snow. This is Matt Dillahunty. And
Word.
YouTube sending me a yellow error banner saying we're not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming, and I don't know what that means.
You don't know what that means?
Well, I don't know why that would be, I guess is what I mean.
All I can tell you is I just tuned into YouTube, and you look amazing.
Oh.
So bandwidth-wise, I think it's probably good. And you actually look much clearer than you do on Vimix. Anyway, enough with the tech stuff overlapping into it. How's everybody doing? This is, of course, the Sunday show. Thank you all for tuning in. And it is a live call-in show particularly focused on religious things. If you're the type of person that has a religious view that we probably don't share and you want to call in and actually defend it, do you believe in God? Why? What do you think about all this? We are always going to give theists priority. And just some tips. I used to say, like, bring your A game, and now it's mostly bring your honest game. So you don't need to try to exaggerate. And if you don't know, or there's an answer, your question you're not comfortable with, it's always best to do those things rather than try to make something up or deflect or get caught in a lie or any number of other things like that. Because despite what some people claim and or think, I genuinely just want good debates. And on that front, I was just at DebateCon 4, which is still going on. Sponsored by Modern Day Debates. And I walked out of a debate yesterday. I know you're saying, Matt, that's 2 debates in 2 weeks you've walked out. Yes, it is. And it's, I'm not going to address the whole thing here. I'm going to do this real quick. Modern Debates got fucking played yesterday, like completely played by just an absolute fascist. My opponent was there to promote his channel. He wasn't actually there for a debate, which is why when the debate topic changed and nobody noticed except me, not even James, the moderator at Modern Day Debates, he didn't notice. When this debate was originally set up, we were trying to set up a debate between me and Blake. Blake couldn't or wouldn't do it at the time. And James suggested that we do a debate with Andrew on Christianity versus secular humanism. And I said, I'll do it, but I'd rather do which is a better foundation for morality, the Bible or secular humanism. And I noted I specifically want someone to defend the Bible or defend where and why they depart from the Bible. And James's reply was, sure, he accepts. And the format was set at 8 to 10 minute opening, 60-minute dialogue, 30-minute Q&A. And that was the last conversation about this debate until it was posted, and it was renamed Christianity versus secular humanism, which is best for society, which was James' original topic instead of mine. Now, I didn't notice right away, and it doesn't make a huge bit of difference because I'm thinking, okay, I can still do this topic. My preparation's still the same, and it's not going to be that different if he defends Christianity and avoids the Bible. Andrew, I don't think didn't notice that the topic was different than he agreed to because he was never there for the topic in the first part. This wasn't supposed to be what it was. The confusion was a little bit on James's part. Probably he's got a lot of debates going on. But my opponent conceded my worldview at the outset. So game over right off the bat. Then presented nothing against secular humanism and nothing in favor of Christianity or the Bible, but we already set that up. Just stated that I borrowed from Christianity, that secular humanism doesn't have an appropriate foundation, and then went into his tirade about how men can't be women, males can't get pregnant. Matt needs to explain all of this and more, by the way, including some white replacement theory talking points. The truth is, whether or not secular humanism has a foundation is irrelevant to the topic of this debate. It's irrelevant to whether or not it's effective, and it's irrelevant to whether or not it's better. It also isn't about defending the Bible. His opening statement was all about me And he mentions my name repeatedly through this. Matt believes this. Matt thinks this. Matt said this. Matt said this. Matt. None of that had anything to do with my opening. It wasn't an opening defending his position. This thing was beneath Jerry Springer levels, was no real debate at all. Just vile white replacement talking points and anti-trans hatefulness, Christian hatred with shards of white supremacy, fascism, and a mockery of trans folks, including suicide. After his opening was over, that was my final straw, where I said that I would not dignify this with a response. I'm not interested in debating people who say they're going to show up to debate one thing and decide to not debate that and instead debate something else. That's incredibly dishonest. I don't like it at all. Not the least of which is if he'd have said, hey, would you like to do a debate on gender ideology and trans rights? I would have said yes. I didn't know anything about this Andrew guy. I didn't know that he was a fascist, white supremacist or whatever, however he decides to label himself. And that's because I don't go and research my debate opponents. I prepare for the subject. And as I've said many times, it's a big mistake for my opponents to prepare for me instead of the subject. In this case, all it did was get me to walk out. And he, by the way, chastised the crowd and promoted and advertised his own channel from the start with, showing exactly what he was there. Now, I will not be ever doing any debates with Modern Day Debates again. I won't be appearing on their channel in any new debates, online or live. Yes, I'm aware they have all that old content and they will keep making money off of my work for them, just like another shitty organization, as long as people keep subscribing. So I've unsubscribed and I'll be starting debate programming content here where we will actually vet participants to make sure that not whether or not they disagree. Of course, you need people who disagree. But if you're going to be hateful and vile, if this is just absolutely the bottoms of the barrel, if you're not there to engage honestly, there will be something done. The moderators are not just going to let someone come in here and mock marginalized individuals with derision and hate language. I will do a full review of the debate that I did yesterday on my own channel. You go to patreon.com/atheist debates. There you go. Full review of that later this month. But for now, let's get on with the Sunday show because I want to have good, better discussions. Good discussions.
Yeah.
I don't know, something decent.
A couple of people in chat saying things like you ran and stuff. Hey, if you're so brave and you think that that's what running is, call in. Unless you're running by your own little bit of logic there. Call in and tell us.
I didn't run. I announced why I was leaving. I called out a liar and hate monger for what he is. This is my job, and debate is serious. I did prep and showed up for a topic. He showed up with his own cameraman trying to do a hit piece. He's not particularly bright, doesn't understand the issues, and all that'll be clear in the debate review. But if you want to say I ran, that's fine. Whatever you say, whatever you want about me. You trolls have no valid or no sound argument for any of your positions. And that's proof by every time you call in, you get owned. And every time you show up in a debate. How many debates have I walked out on? 2. 1, 2 weeks ago with a reptilian alien, children of Dracula, globe skeptic. And this one, a hateful fascist who, by the way, evidently all the content has disappeared from his channel. So anybody who thinks that I didn't do the right thing, I don't care what you think. And you know what? I'm still and will always be the most popular thing on the Modern Day Debates channel, for which I'm a little bit sorry. And we're going to keep doing stuff here.
Yeah. It'd be interesting too for any of these people who I've noticed saying other guy won. I can't remember what his name is. Big fascist dick or
Andrew
whatever.
Something. I think his old name was Big Papa Fascist or something. I don't know.
Okay. I'm going to go with Big Fascist Dick. I just want to know what proposition you think he won, since again, Matt's already pointed out, he conceded the actual topic of the debate.
Oh, this is actual anti-trans hate. All these people. And it's a bunch of, when I go to look at the people on Twitter who were like, oh, Andrew owned you, you ran away. It's a bunch of, when I go to their profiles, it's accounts created last month with Cyrillic letters.
Yeah. And it's not even that hard. If you just want a summary of how, as a secular humanist, I can basically support trans issues, because it is philosophically and scientifically consistent. There is no, to be against it, you have to start basically listing out and quoting dogma or proving that you don't know shit about science. But the scientific consensus in both biological and psychological terms, and then even when it comes to philosophy and the sort of identifiers and who can be a man and who can be a woman and all of that stuff, it all works out. It's all consistent. And so anyway, nobody wants that actual answer. They want to do their.
It looks live to me on this end. I'm seeing excellent connection.
Okay. It went down to no data and everybody was saying buffering. And now, it says excellent connection again. I think there's a chance that it wouldn't have been, we never lost connection to each other. So this might have been a YouTube thing. But we're back with excellent connection. I'll bet you since we had poor connection up to now, YouTube was having an issue and they rebooted their whatever. And hopefully now that means we're back.
Weird.
Good, because now everybody will be able to hear James. And anybody who calls in to say that they believe there's a creator who's half evil, half good, and I'm assuming those are approximations and not exact measurements, I got to hear about this.
All right, so we'll start again here. Sorry about that. James in Hawaii, a theist who believes in a creator who's half evil, half good. You are on the line with Jimmy and Matt.
Hi. Yes, thank you for taking my call. I was surprised that you took it, actually. I thought it was a little too offbeat. Anyway, you want me to explain what I think?
Please. And James, let me just say, because of the delay and because we see clarity, there's an and because of who I am, there's an incredibly strong likelihood that I will interrupt. All I'm going to be doing is interrupting for clarity if you say something that I don't understand. But if you'd be so kind as explain why you believe there's a half evil, half good God that's created a universe as a playfield, that would be cool.
Okay. Well, this is just a possibility. I have no evidence, factual knowledge that it's true. It's just an idea.
But James, do you believe it's true?
For me to deal with the crap of this world.
James, do you believe it's true, or are you just positing a science fiction idea?
It's more of a science fiction idea. Yeah.
Or fantasy, I guess. Okay. So I don't really care about Matt, if you want to still hear about it, I'd rather hear about the God that you do believe in and the qualities, because you've said you're a theist. I'd rather hear of the qualities that now you go.
I'm not a theist. I would put myself in that category. I don't believe there's a God. I just think there's a possibility that there's a creator.
So
on the concept that I believe
why, when the call screener asked if you were an atheist or a theist, did you say theist?
I guess I misunderstood him, but I didn't claim to be. I apologize if you got that impression.
Okay. Well, I'm not interested in science fiction ideas any more than I'm interested in, I don't need atheists calling in to tell me about the God they think might exist under certain circumstances. That is not only boring beyond belief, but it does no good when what we're doing here is trying to address what people actually believe and whether or not it's worth justifying or whether it's justified.
The best I can ask you, James, to try and save this a little is, why do you believe that God is possible? How have you ever seen that God was established as possible?
Well, it explains why the world is so messed up in terms of half good and half evil. Why do things happen that are good and why do things happen that are bad? And the only way I can come up with it, there is a creator that is both.
Hang on, James.
And he allows both to happen, and he actually causes both to happen.
It's like they can't hear.
James, I think so. Yeah, James, you hear me now, right?
Yes.
Okay. You've just said it explains that why the everything is the way it is. Are you saying that life on Earth is 50% good, 50% bad, and therefore a creator would be consistent for being 50% good and 50% bad?
Correct. Yes.
How did you establish that life is 50% good and 50% bad?
Well, look at all the murders, the thievery, the rapes.
No, I know. I didn't ask how did you establish there are bad things. Where did you come up with this number 50-50?
Well, that way there's balance.
Why would you think that there is balance?
Well, to me, I guess it's just my concept that the world is balanced half and half, and because to me, I see the world half good. A lot of good things happen, and I see a lot of bad things happening. So, I give credit to a creator that would also be half good and half bad. And we're in this whole world. Go ahead.
You don't actually know that it's half good, half bad. You just see good and bad.
Oh, no, just observation.
And
just what I see.
Right. And so you're sitting down with a scorecard, and how do you determine, is it one bad thing, or is one tally, or is something that's super bad worth more than something that's a little bad?
No, just a general observation. I don't really keep track of it like that.
Right. So you don't keep track of it, but you've come to the conclusion that it's 50-50.
Yeah, based on an overall observation,
No. Based on, you can call it observation, but that's even using the word a little bit liberally. You sort of sit back and go, every time I think of a good thing, I can then also think of a bad thing. So that implies 50-50. That doesn't mean there's 50-50 anything. But at the end of the day, the original question, James, was, how do you establish that this God is possible?
Well, I believe it's possible that this world, the universe, was created by an intelligent entity.
Why do you believe it's possible?
But I can't prove it. Well,
why do you believe it is possible?
Well, because it's here.
No.
It's here.
I heard you say it's possible. I heard you say it's possible. I've heard you say you can't prove that is what happened.
No, I can't prove it. No, I admit that.
I know that. I know that, James. James, I'm asking you how you establish that it is possible. Not whether you can prove it. Not if you believe it's possible. Why do you think it's possible?
Just from my personal observation, the way I look at it.
James,
my perspective.
James,
I never understand.
Do you, if somebody said, why do you think this is true? And they said, just my personal observation. Do you think that's a reason? Do you think that explains anything to anyone? Do you think that is in any way how we would go about determining whether or not your assessment has any foundation?
No, my assessment doesn't have any foundation. That's why it's just an idea.
Go the fuck away.
Just here to waste time.
What?
Go the
Goodbye,
fuck
James.
away.
There's no value to this, James.
Why am I swearing? James.
Yeah, I am. Why are you swearing?
James,
There's no reason to get
first of all, I'll swear as much as I want, but we've been sitting here.
Yeah, you can. Yeah,
shut up and listen. Shut up and listen. You want an answer to your fucking question or not, you fucking moron? All right. Now I'll apologize. Been a rough week. Shouldn't have called you a name. My apologies, especially that name. It's very frustrating to sit here and ask someone why you think something, and then you get, so my observation. Okay. When we're trying to figure, we bent over backwards to try to give you air on a topic that is beyond a waste of time. Grand speculation about whether or not there's a God. And Jimmy sat here and kept going, why do you think this? Why do you think this? Well, it's just an observation. And all I did was ask you whether or not you thought that was the sort of answer anyone should give to edify or improve or help understanding of a subject. And you don't seem to give a shit. You don't care if your position is justified. You don't care how to argue about rationality. You don't care about how to give evidence. You don't care about how to construct an argument. You don't care about any of it. So we're going to unmute you, and I'm going to say, why are you an atheist identifying yourself as a theist? And then when we ask you questions about your useless proposition, are you giving us even more useless justifications for it?
I appreciate the way you try to remain focused on everything. I appreciate that. I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm just giving you my idea on, let's call it my coping mechanism on how I deal with the world. Would that be fair to say that?
Why? Okay, so you're not trying to prove anything. You don't actually
No,
believe any
no.
of this. Just let me talk. You don't actually believe any of this. You're just sitting around coming up with a coping mechanism, and you thought you would call into a show whose primary fucking justification is tell us what you believe and why, and you're not telling us what you believe, and you're not telling us why. Why should we spend any more time talking to you?
Curiosity?
What
I'm not
is there to be
curious.
curious about? You have no position and nothing substantive to support it.
James, what's the title of today's show?
Exactly. Well, that's why I was surprised you took my call.
No, James. I asked a
Right.
question. I just want to answer to it. James, what is the title of today's episode?
Why do you go to church?
No, it isn't.
Well, that's what I saw on the screen, you know?
That is not the title
No, you
of
That's what I
today's
thought
episode.
it was. I thought it was why you go
That's
to
an
church.
old episode. But by the way,
what you thought it
aren't
was.
answering that either. Today's episode
I
is
know.
do you believe in God or
I
hell?
know.
We will generally take other spiritual and related things, but it isn't and has never been what kind of gods do you conceive of but have no ability to display are possible? And so, James, I'm going to tell you this, and I'm going to try and do it harsh enough that it gets through your head. You do not
go ahead.
have a good reason to believe that the God you came up with is possible. I am not saying it is impossible, but you have not met a burden of possibility, period. It is just you sitting back and going, well, 50-50, which is a made up arbitrary thing you came up with in your head, and anyone could come up with anything, and apparently that's possible. So I think that there's a magic 50-50 slot machine in the sky, and it's establishing whether or not things are good or bad. That's possible, except for I haven't shown that it's possible at all. And you have the equivalent of the magic slot machine. This was a waste of time, James. And next time, don't assume other people will be curious about what kind of fantasies you can make up. If you have something you actually want to defend, you can present it now. Otherwise, we're moving on.
Well, thank you for accepting the call. And like I said, I was surprised that the call screener actually put me on the list, to be honest with you.
Well, yeah, because you told the call screener you were a theist with a belief in the creator. I'm surprised that you decided to lie.
I didn't lie about anything. What did I
you
lie
did.
about?
You said you were a theist and that you believed in a creator.
I already said that I misunderstood that question. I don't identify myself as a theist. If I did, I apologize for giving that impression. But
Stop. The screeners just write what you say. And you said you believed in a creator, and then you described the creator. That's a lie. Goodbye, James. Didn't need it. Not for another moment.
Yeah, it's and you know, okay, maybe there's some potential curiosity somewhere about, is there any good reason to believe in a God or in a possibility of a God?
But I don't have curiosity. So, except when I get high, I don't have curiosity of what people could just make up. It's just not interesting to me. Got a preference in the next two?
No.
All right. I hope that I'm going to pronounce this right. We're going to say Teague. Is that how you say your name in Wisconsin?
Yeah, you got it exactly right. Can you guys hear me well?
Sure do. Go ahead.
Yep.
I was just going to ask how you justify secular humanism. Also, in light of the last one, I am an atheist, in case there was any confusion with that, but just in case. But I understand generalities of it, you know, where you have like your well-being and you can abstract that to applying to other people. But I don't see it, I mean, A, being like a logical necessity, or
No, who said it was?
You go ahead, sorry.
Who said it was?
I don't think it necessarily needs to be, but if you're in a place of, you know, easy exploitation, I think that that would be in your best interest to carry out with that, you know? Like,
that sentence made no
it doesn't
sense. I
seem-
don't know when if you're in a place of easy exploitation, it's in your best interest to carry out with that. That sentence makes no sense to me. That is not a coherent, cogent sentence.
Okay, I'll rephrase it. If you're in a position in which you can easily exploit other human beings, it may be in your best interest to continue exploiting these other human beings.
Okay. It could be in your interest. It could be in your best interest to exploit other human beings. Certainly, it could be in your best interest in the short term, which is why people do it. However, secular humanism isn't about any individual scenario. It's about foundational principles. And would the world be better if we advocated for exploiting people or opposed exploiting people? Which one results in a better world?
Teague, I dare say, were you just trying to make the point that if it was in your best interest to exploit other people, that secular humanism would say that is what you should do?
No, I'm wondering how you get from individual principles to the general principles.
I just asked you a question that kind of explains it. This is about what creates a better world. And if we allow for and encourage exploitation, does that make a better world or a worse world? Or not?
Why would I care about what creates a better world? If, like,
because you're living in the
something
world.
creates a better world in the next 100 years, if I'm not going to be around for it, why should I care?
If you're going to ask a question, you got to let me answer it. Why would you care about what creates a better world? Because you're living in the world.
Yeah, but the second part of my question illustrates that there are certain things that I shouldn't care about because they won't be able to apply in my lifetime.
Okay. So what?
So climate change is an example of that.
Okay. So yeah, if you don't care about your offspring, or the future people, that's your prerogative. But secular humanism moves from the individual to humanity. And so, yes, there's no obligation for you to give a shit about the people who are going to be here after you die. But we generally do. We generally do because we're looking at this at the level of the preservation of humanity, and that exists after we die.
Climate change was a terrible example, though, of something that won't affect you to work on now. Of course, it will affect you. It'll affect you immediately in the short term and in the long term if we were to solve it. I don't know. Yeah. What
Unless you're going to die, unless you're going to die at the end of this call.
Yeah,
that could be. I could be like a political boomer, and I'm, just in office, just waiting out my last days, but. I often see people that support secular humanism act as if you can take it from an individual, like you care about yourself, therefore you should care about the world kind of thing. I can understand as a general rule, but not
That's certainly one aspect. That's one aspect which you just said you understand as a general rule. So what's the problem? What are you not seeing?
It doesn't really have any weight on people that are in great positions of exploitation. Like if your boss is going to exploit you, I mean, maybe that's not in his best interest because you would just quit, but it doesn't seem like a very cogent, not cogent, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like a very good, or it doesn't follow for me necessarily to get to the individual case, to the large case.
What would you do? What would you fucking do to stop a boss from exploiting someone that you can't do under secular humanism? Name it.
What would I do if I was being if someone was being exploited?
Shut up and listen carefully. What steps would you take to prevent a boss from exploiting someone that is not possible to take under secular humanism?
I'm not saying it's not possible because secular humanism is about the theory, not the application.
Teague, I'm trying to address your objections honestly. If there is a solution to exploitation, it is either doable under secular humanism, which means it's consistent with secular humanism, or it's not. If you're going to object to secular humanism as if it can't solve this problem, which is what you did, then you need to state what solution you think would solve it that is not possible under secular humanism. Otherwise, you have no objection.
But I'm not saying it's a problem. I'm not saying that exploitation is a problem. That's a conclusion of secular humanism. That exploitation is a potential problem.
No, Teague, we were just talking, and you gave a boss exploiting someone as something that would be beneficial to them that secular humanism doesn't have a way to stop.
Which also isn't correct. It's as bad as your climate change point.
What do you mean by that?
What is your problem?
Sorry, that cut out for me. I didn't hear that.
You continue with Matt.
What is your objection to secular humanism?
I'm just saying it doesn't follow from the individual case to the general case.
I don't give a shit. I'm saying, what is your objection to secular humanism? Whether or not you think it follows, or whether or not you have this path from individual to general, which, by the way, is wrong. Which is, by the way, you interrupt me one more fucking time. I dare you. What is your objection to secular humanism?
It's not about an objection. My question was about how do you justify it?
Goodbye, then. If you don't have an objection to it, what on earth are we having a conversation about? How do you justify it? I already acknowledged that pointed out that secular humanism is about a better world. That is the justification. If we want a better world, we take the best steps towards that better world. That is the justification. Our desires and needs. It's right there in the Secular Humanist Manifesto. It's in the second version of the Secular Manifesto, where it talks about ethics and morals stemming from human experience and situational ethics stemming from human need and interest, with reason and intelligence being the most effective instruments we possess. And it points out that secular humanists are not advocating for the use of scientific intelligence independent of or in opposition to emotion, because we believe in the cultivation of feeling and love. And it's not anything in opposition to the individual. It begins with, I want to see a better world. Does a better world include exploitation or not? And if we can agree, as we should, that exploitation does not result in a better world, then secular humanism would say, cool, we need to find out what steps we can take to reduce exploitation, because that makes a better world. Your objection or your concern that you don't think it follows from the individual to the general is not only wrong, because I live in the world, and so do you. And what impacts the world impacts us. I benefit from it. So as we increase education, then my access to improvements in my life increases as well. This is incredibly simple. I genuinely wish we could figure out why you're stuck. But if you don't have any objection to secular humanism, thanks for calling.
I find that often with people like that, I can't speak to Teague. I don't know Teague well enough, and I'm certainly not going to diagnose Teague with anything. However, I hear the objections from people who represent some sort of non-empathetic condition, or who want to justify their own desires to be exploitive and their own desires to manipulate, which, by the way, those are, as far as objections, it's very easy to come up with objections to those. But the reason why I said the whole thing about how is it appealing to the worker who's going to be exploited when it won't solve their problem, as Matt just mentioned, it can solve their problem, because overall, when you are participating, yes, if there's no one else is a secular humanist and nothing else is consistent with secular humanism, and you have no one with which to collectively find solutions, you're probably fucked. However, if you participate in solutions that are either themselves secular humanist or consistent with secular humanism, and you are approaching systemic change, it is why we have seen over the course of years workers' rights improve. They're not great, but they're improving. Why we see things like unions, why we see things that are antithetical to the alternative religious ideas and antithetical to totally narcissistic, sociopathic and psychopathic ideas, because it benefits society at large. And if you try to be the person who subdues and exploits people, the individuals, and you can't see why a person like that, whether you're literally Kim Jong-un or just Kim Jong-un to the people who are in your life, then I think that there's no point in engaging with a person who doesn't understand societal benefits of collective solutions. But whatever. Go off, Teague. That phone number is 720-619-2288, and there's a web link in the description if you'd like to call in. We have put a poll in chat. So far, almost 500 of you have responded, and about 30 of you have said that you do, in fact, believe in God. We've just proven you don't have to be a theist you don't have to be a theist to get us to be annoyed with your dishonesty and disinterest in engaging a conversation at an actual honest level. So if you will call, and you are one of the people who are a theist who want to call in and talk about why you believe in God, just stay honest and you have nothing to worry about. Seriously, just have a nice, honest conversation with us. We do it all the time. But right now, we just get pedantic, dishonest assholes. And if you're not a pedantic, dishonest asshole, we'd love to talk to you.
Granted, I wouldn't normally want to recommend people necessarily run out and watch the debate from yesterday, but the opening statement that I made, which explained very simply the principles of secular humanism, is up there in that debate yesterday. And I know that the lone objection that my debate opponent seemed to suggest was that I had to borrow from a Christian worldview, or that secular humanism does not have some objective metaphysical foundation, which isn't an objection, because first you would need to demonstrate that in order for a model to be useful and correct and better than another model, that it would need such a foundation. And so when Teague or anybody else calls in, you can't justify this with so-and-so, there is no worldview of this type where you're talking about oughts that you can justify. It's an illusion that theists often do by saying, well, ours is grounded in God. No, it's not. There's never been any demonstration of any God in the history of the world. What you're grounding it in is your claims about God. And your claims about God are less reliable and useful as a foundation than our claims about what we are going to do, what we want to do. This is why one of the things I stated yesterday, which I'll repeat here, is that the preciousness and dignity of the individual is a central human value within secular humanism. It's about us affirming this. We're the ones who say, we are going to value this. Nobody else could say it. But the fact that we say it is incredibly powerful. And it's more powerful than if a God affirmed it, because a God isn't a human. So it's humans declaring humanity is important. But it's infinitely more powerful than some human claiming that there's a God that affirms this, that the only way we can think humans have dignity is if there's a God who made them with dignity, which is nonsense. I can think that humans have dignity, whether they do to a God or a universe or not. That's my assessment of human beings. And as it turns out, it's the assessment of most humans who have ever lived, because at the individual level, I not only think that my life has value, I know that I benefit from other people acknowledging that my life has value. And when I work with those people who value my life and my dignity, and I value their life and their dignity, we now have a cooperative aspect that encourages a better world, a world that is better than, I don't value you, you don't value me. That world leads to chaos. This is so laughably simple and obvious. I'm dumbfounded. I'm not as dumbfounded when theists come up and say it, because they've been fed this propaganda. Life doesn't have any dignity unless there's a God that says it does. Bullshit. That's like saying a flower is not pretty unless God says it's pretty. I get to determine whether or not that flower is pretty to me, or at least I have my assessment of it. And if most of us get together and say, you know what? Roses are really pretty, and that other thing over there is a weed, then that is our assessment of it. It doesn't mean that there's some objective better to a rose than to this weed. There's nothing objectively better about humans than any other species. It just values more to us because we're part of it. Just like for most people, you tend to value yourself primary, your family and friends, the people in your inner circle at a secondary level. And then as you expand out towards people that you don't know, have never met, and don't even exist within the same time frame that you do, you care, generally speaking, less and less. There are exceptions to this, but
yeah. I want to
Anyway.
get this last call before, and then I'm gonna probably after this call switch off with Paul. Part of why I like this, I'm not going to read it out loud, but I do just want to say to Dan in Wisconsin, you have one of the coolest phone numbers I've ever seen, but I won't say what it is.
Oh yeah,
but it's a cool phone number.
we're not. Ignore that. Hey Dan, welcome.
Hello?
Yeah, there you are. How you doing, Dan?
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yeah, you're on the line with Jimmy and Matt. Let's hear it.
All right, I do have a question. Are you guys expect people to call and give you the evidence you need?
Evidence.
I'm not sure.
I mean, instead of searching for yourself, you are making a show and expect people to call.
To have
So-
right, and you asked if we expect them to have the evidence we need. The evidence we need for what?
Well, today's title is God or hell, right?
So maybe this helps. What we expect is for people who believe something that we don't believe to call in and present their reasons why they believe that.
Just the reason, or do you expect evidence, scientific evidence?
Well, I'm expecting them to give their reasons. It would be nice if there was solid evidence for their reason, but if their reason is, I just accept it on faith, at least now I know their reason, and now I know that their reason is not a good one.
Well, I give you my reason.
For what?
Okay.
For believing
For believing what?
God.
Which God?
Well, there's only one God.
Okay, what? Tell me about that God. Give me some characteristics of that God and why you believe it.
Well, going based on all the religion, around the world, including Christianity, Jews, and Muslim. Let's go based
Okay.
on those books.
So let me. I'm assuming that right now you're trying to answer the characteristics of God. So basically, you're saying you believe the Abrahamic God of that is attributed to Jews, Christians, and Muslims. Some version of that you believe is real, right?
Right.
Okay, why?
Well, because I don't want to go to hell.
So you believe because you don't want to go to hell.
Yeah, and that is the reason.
Okay. Why don't you believe in other gods that might send you to other hells?
Which other God?
Zeus?
Are you expect everybody on the planet to speak English and use the same word, God?
Okay.
I
bye,
don't
Dan.
know how that remotely addresses my question. You said you believe in a God because you don't want to go to hell, and you believe in the Abrahamic God. And I asked why you don't believe in other gods that might send you to different hells or might have other consequences. What if there's... Oh, you hung up?
Yes, I did. And we're going to also just move on. Dan, you're banned from calling the show, and you know exactly why. Go fuck yourself. I genuinely hope that your life is worse after this. Fuck you.
Wow.
Yep. No, you will never be on the show ever again, period. And yeah, he knows exactly why. I'll message you about it.
Okay.
But I
that's
probably
fine.
got time
You
for
tell
one
me
more
later.
call. Let's see. This one's a little bit, I guess let's try and take this one quickly and just explain, and maybe I should let the screeners know. So I'm bringing on Boy in Missouri, and the name's just on there is Boy. Boy, I'm trying to politely express to you, we don't really just let people come on and sort of share. It's not really an open mic thing. It's not just share how you became an atheist. It's not that
Oh, the
kind of
audio's
show.
awful.
If you have a specific contention or problem or
Are
a
you
question,
walking in
we
a
can
forest?
certainly address that. Yeah, also
Am
your
I
mic's
what?
terrible, boy.
Are you walking in a forest?
No, no. You picking up some background sound?
Yeah.
Oh, I've got a fan going. Just a second, I'll shut it off.
Sure, but do you have a question or a contention, or are you really just calling to share your story of how you became an atheist?
Well, yeah, I guess maybe that's what I'm really trying to do. I thought I had some positions that might interest others.
Yeah. So our suggestion to you would be go make a video, go make a YouTube channel, go do whatever, go share that somewhere and put it out. We don't really do, that's just kind of like platform sharing for the sake of platform sharing. It's just not really the purpose of the show, but appreciate you calling anyway.
Yeah. Well, okay. I had some things I was going to say, but yeah, I can understand.
For sure.
All right,
Like I said, if you got a
I'll,
question or contention, you can pose that now. Otherwise, yeah, we'll move on here.
Yeah. If there's some question or whatever, we're happy to get it in and move on, but this isn't an open mic for here's my thoughts on other things. We really want folks to call in who are going to talk about what they believe and why, especially if there's going to be some contention or disagreement. But
yeah, I wondered why. I had a question. I figured maybe you could answer it. Was why can't people just stop believing?
as an act of volition?
No, just stop believing. We have free will, don't we? And there's certainly
first of all,
plenty not to believe about.
First of all, boy, do you know what the word volition means?
Probably not. Huh.
Okay. So when you said why can't people stop believing, and I said as an act of volition, I mean as a simple act of will. Why can't people just decide to stop believing? Is what I thought you were asking.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay,
because that's
I'm
not
sorry,
how belief works. Because that's not how belief works. When you believe something, it means
Right.
you are convinced that it is true or likely true, and becoming convinced is a process. It's not a decision. Nobody just decides, hey, I don't believe in gravity.
Well, I mean, with the abundance of evidence that doesn't support a God, I would think that just like looking at the last 100 years, there's been the First World War, 15 million people were killed. The Spanish flu killed 50 million. The Second World War killed 75 million. And then there's all the other countless other wars.
Boy, what does any of that have to do with whether or not there's a God?
Well, I'm just saying, I believe if you stop believing, there is no God. The power of God comes from your belief.
Okay. So I don't know that you and I are able to have a rational, cogent conversation at all, because I ask questions and you ask something completely unrelated. So
yeah, I'm sorry.
What do wars have to do with whether or not there's a God?
Well, I look at the wars happening. That would have to be something God allowed or caused to happen, and that doesn't sound like a God I would want to worship.
Okay, great. Boy, if you limit gods to something you would want to love or worship, how does that disprove that there's not some God out there that you don't want to love or worship?
Well, you don't need proof to believe in God. Why do you need proof to not believe in God?
Boy, if you're going to claim there's no God, all I'm asking is if you say, that doesn't sound like a God I'd want to believe, well, cancer doesn't sound like a disease I'd want to get, but it's still fucking real. So how do you know there's not a God that allows wars?
I guess my view of God's meant that something that wouldn't allow that kind of thing to happen.
Why is God limited to the sort of being that would not allow a war? Where did you get that idea?
I don't know. I thought that'd be a positive attribute of a loving God, all knowing, all loving, omnipotent.
Omnipotent. Yeah, I think what's happening. I think what's happening.
I only have a high school education, so
It's fine. It's fine, boy. I think what's happening here is you're trying to express something that's pretty common, which is the world doesn't appear to be the sort of world that I think there should be if the gods that I keep hearing about were real. And so on that front, you're using this conflict, which could be viewed as divine hiddenness or whatever, between what world you would expect to exist if the gods people told you about were real, and the world that is, and saying, it's reasonable for me to at least dismiss, if not completely disregard and say they're not true, those gods. But you can't make that statement about gods that you don't know about, gods that you haven't been presented with, gods that people haven't done. So you could maybe say, if somebody says there's a God who loves us and wants to stop evil and can stop evil, then why is there still evil happening? That's kind of what you're doing.
Well,
and that certainly causes a conflict on that particular type of God. But what if there's a God that knows better than you do and puts a world in motion and decides not to intervene because he knows that that's better for you? You can't disprove that God, can you?
Well, because I call myself a 100% atheist, a true atheist doesn't believe in any gods. So these other gods have no relevance.
Sure. An atheist is someone who does not believe in gods, but that's not the same as believing that gods don't exist. That's different. But in any case, when you say you're 100% atheist, what do you mean by that?
Well, I've lived most of my life. I've never been a believer. I've never felt the presence of God, even when I was a child and in church. And as I grew up, I just came to the realization that I didn't believe in God, and I said I was an atheist. But then I started saying, well, I'd leave 1% out there just because I don't know, So that's why I said I was a 99% atheist until this summer. And this summer I had kind of an epiphany, a revelation, I guess. And I said to myself, why can't I just say I don't believe at all in God? Take that 1% out of the equation, say I'm 100%. That's how I got to that designation.
Sure. So there's a couple things to look at. One is that you could view your 99 to 100% thing as if it's attributed to how confident you are that there are no gods, like the positive claim, there are no gods. You were 99% confident of that, but now you're 100% confident. There's a problem with that because now your position is that you are completely convinced in something that you cannot demonstrate is true. It may well be true, but you can't demonstrate it. And it's because there are unfalsifiable gods out there. There are gods that people have proposed. I'm not saying the gods are out there. I'm saying there are God claims out there that aren't testable, that aren't falsifiable. And so the other way to look at this of your 99 to 100% is that you have doubt that there's a God, but you left the possibility that there's a God. And now you've determined that there's no possibility of a God. And while I understand why you would do that, you can't do that because now you've adopted a burden of proof to show that there is not even a possible God anywhere ever. You can't demonstrate that.
Well, I can't demonstrate there is a God, but yet I'm asked to believe that all the time. So why do I need to demonstrate that there's not a God to believe that?
you were wrong when you believed without sufficient reason, and you are wrong to be completely confident without sufficient reason. The position you should hold is, I do not have a reason to believe in a God, and I cannot rule out every proposed God. I will believe in a God when there's sufficient evidence for one. How is that position not good enough?
Well, actually, I did some research, and that's what led to this revelation this summer. And I was a little enhanced when I was doing the research.
Well, you got high.
But,
you got high, and you thought about God and looked up some stuff. What was it?
The origin of God.
The origin of which God?
Jesus Christ,
Okay.
the Christian
How
God,
does
the
the
Muslim
origin?
God, and the Jewish
how does
God. They all came from Abrahamic. They're Abrahamic religions. Sorry.
How does the origin of the Abrahamic God rule out some other God?
Well, before the time of Abraham, there was no reference to God. There was many gods that were worshipped. We're a polytheistic society, or they were, rather.
Boy, do you realize what you just
said?
There
was no references to a single God until Abraham.
Stop.
Oh. Okay.
You realize that you just said there was no reference to God, there was reference to gods.
Yeah, gods.
Gods are a bunch of gods. It's what? No, stop talking. It's like saying there wasn't a rose, there were roses.
Well, okay, what I meant to say was there was no reference to a single God.
So what?
The one that, well,
if you were to prove
that's the one.
Boy, it's you don't get to go to a one. You've already said that you are a 100% non-believer of every God, not one fucking God.
I do. I don't believe in any gods at all.
Okay. My apologies. We're going to move on. We're going to move on.
Thanks, Dan. Boy, this was boy.
All right. Well, sorry.
I shot you a couple messages. I think you will agree with what went down. Before I'm gonna Paul, let me check with Arden. Arden, if you'll just message me if Paul is ready to take over, that will help me. And just wanted to say to everybody, check out after this show, probably right as the show's ending, unless I run into a technical issue, which does happen. But I'm going to be now getting the new episode of the Sometime Show over on my channel, Jimmy Snow, ready to go. It will be a show that mostly focuses on political and news events. However, the second half of the show will also be a call-in portion, and we'll be doing other things like a super chat question of the day. That's the gimmick over there, as opposed to the ones that we have here. So please come check that out. There's a whole lot to talk about. Today's episode, it's going to be more of catching up on a lot of the news that has happened since the last episode, which was like 2 years ago. But then after this, it's going to be every Tuesday and Thursday. So and hopefully more than that, if it does so well that I can hire some help to take some of the time-consuming things off of my hands. I am still, let's see, okay. So yes, I am going to leave, and Paul will take over in a moment. But thank you, everybody. I hope to see you in a little bit over on the other channel.
Awesome. In the meantime, while we get stuff switched over, I'm going to go ahead and take another call. And by the way, there's a couple calls that end up getting dropped because we are always going to prioritize theistic calls. So if you're out there waiting and you haven't called yet, if you have something that you believe, particularly if it is supernatural in nature, or God, or you have, I will take questions about atheism, secular humanism, all kinds of other things as well. But if you are a believer in a God and you have the potential to defend it, that's what we'd like to have. And by the way, if you're an atheist and you're someone who just doesn't believe in a God, cool. That's really interesting. It's not the purpose of this show. But if you have concerns or questions, or maybe you think you've got atheism right and somebody else has got it wrong, by all means, jump in on that. At no point am I trying to be overly difficult, but if what you're saying has logical problems, I'm just going to point them out. And it's fine. It doesn't matter if you've got a high school education, a junior high school education, a PhD, 5 PhDs. We should all be able to look at it and say, okay, and we can do it by analogy. Do you believe there's a rose in my refrigerator? Well, we can go down and look in my refrigerator and see if there's a rose. And if it turns out there's not, cool. Then we have a justified position that we don't believe there's a rose in my refrigerator. And actually, in that case, we might have a justified position that we believe there is no rose in my refrigerator. But if you don't have good reason to believe it, that is different from having a good reason to not, or to believe that it's not true. I do not believe X is true, and I believe X is not true, are slightly different. It's often I've used the example of it's the difference between being on a jury and ruling not guilty, which means you are not convinced of guilt, and being able to rule innocent, which means you are convinced that they're innocent. In both cases, because of the way the burden of proof works, an individual accused of a crime essentially is acquitted if they are not demonstrably guilty. Doesn't mean the courts ruled they're innocent. It just means we were unable to conclude they were guilty. And similarly, there are technicalities where you may need to rule not guilty, even if you personally suspect that they might be guilty, because we have standards of evidence and requirements. It must be demonstrated. For example, in some cases, it's beyond a reasonable doubt or to a reasonable certainty or these things. And so I may think that a particular defendant is innocent, but I may not have the sufficient evidence to rule that way. Similarly, I might think that this particular defendant is guilty, but I might not have the evidence to do it. Like, how many of us know somebody where they'll say something to you and you'd be like, gosh, I really think this person's lying to me, but I can't prove it. And if you're going to run with, I think they're lying to me, but I can't prove it, so I'm going to be dubious, or I'm going to ask more questions, that's fine. But if you think somebody's lying to you and you know that you can't prove it, and then you go and tell other people that person lied to me, now you have adopted a claim that you may not be able to demonstrate. This is kind of what we're doing when people accuse God of existing. I find God not guilty of existing. Depending on the God, I might also find them innocent of existing if there's some way to demonstrate that. But I have vamped enough on the foundations of guilty and not guilty and innocent. Welcome, Paul, to the show. How you doing, man?
I'm doing okay. Hopefully you can hear me.
I hear you just fine. I saw that you were a little jokery for
I was.
Halloween.
Thank you to my partner, Shannon, who uses me as a canvas sometimes. So, yeah, that's great.
Well, it's a good canvas, and no artist should blame their tools anyway. We got some calls lined up if you're ready.
I am ready.
Sweet. This one is actually a question for me, but I don't know what the question specifically is, and it's very likely that we will both have strong input on this. Who knows? Nikki in San Jose is an atheist, pronouns are him, wants to ask me a question about something happened or a statement that was made during an opening yesterday. So, Nikki, welcome to the show. What's the question?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for taking my call. And so essentially, I wrote out my thoughts. So if it sounds like I'm reading, it's because I am. But essentially, so I watched the debate yesterday with you and Andrew Wilson, and I was looking forward to you putting him in his place on this topic, because he posed like this scenario of if everyone was gay, therefore that would lead to there being no more humans, and that would make secular humanism meaningless and demonstrably worse for humans. And I don't know a good response to that. I was just wondering what your response to that would be.
Sure. By the way, I'm going to go through everything that he asked in a debate review on my own channel at another time. But in this case, what you wrote down was, if everyone was gay, that would lead to no more humans. And what was the follow-up after that?
Well, it was just like, that would make, in his view, that secular humanism is meaningless and demonstrably worse for humans, because therefore there would be humans would be no longer exist.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Secular humanism doesn't say anything about whether or not anybody needs to be gay or should be gay. And whether you have secular humanism or not, everyone's either going to be gay or they're not. So everyone could be gay, and nobody advocates for secular humanism.
Oh, okay. I guess just to, I don't know his full view or yours, but like, or all of Christianity either, but like, I guess just a common thing I've heard is like, well, Christianity is against gay people. Therefore, at least under, I think, that worldview, at least humans would exist. Does that make sense?
So under Christianity, there's no guarantee that anyone will reproduce, and there's no guarantee that anybody will or won't be gay. There are plenty of gay people who are Christian. And even if Christianity were true, there's plenty of gay people, whether they're Christian or not. And by the way, gay people can reproduce.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
Gay people can reproduce. I know plenty of gay people who have kids.
Oh, okay.
Even natural ones.
Okay, well, like you said, you'll put it in the debate with you, so I'll look forward to that. I was just curious because, like I said, I didn't know a good response to it. I just wanted to hear yours.
Yeah,
so, thank you very much.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sure. No, it's fine, Nikki. I'll let you go. I'll address this off, and we got some theist callers in as well. Yeah, I don't want to go through all of Andrew's stuff right now, but the notion that secular humanism wouldn't have a way to counter everyone becoming gay and being gay is, I'm going to try to do the rest of the show without, because I called somebody a moron earlier and I genuinely regret it. I shouldn't say that. I try to scrub that word from my vocabulary anyway, but I definitely shouldn't have done it. So my apologies again. The notion that there's some risk or likelihood of everybody becoming gay is absurd. The notion that if everybody became gay or was gay, this would lead to the extermination of the species is also absurd, because we have the ability to procreate, and gay people can still have sex with people of the same and other genders, and we also have scientific ways of continuing the species. But the notion that this is a problem for secular humanism is also weird, because secular humanism doesn't have anything to do with being gay, doesn't say anything about it other than, hey, we're not going to judge people or say they're bad for being gay. And so this fear seems to derive from a particular irrational theistic position that begins with, if something is permissible, let me follow that slippery slope all the way down to it takes over the world. Because they see that, if we allow porn, it'll take over the world. Congratulations, porn's taken over the world. Didn't end the world. I don't think porn's causing climate change, but what the hell do I know? But at the end of the day, the mere fact that the people who are objecting to this are vehemently anti-gay means that there's zero risk of everybody becoming gay. And if everybody became gay and we entirely stopped procreating, then humanity would go extinct. Well, how do you determine that that's a worse situation? If people lived their lives and enjoyed their lives, the fact that we enjoyed our lives to the point where we were extinct and went extinct in a way that did not hurt other people, how'd you determine this wrong?
I wonder if they're trying to do, if I may steal man, I wonder if they're trying to do an internal critique. Just like the problem with evil isn't actually a problem other than an internal critique of Christianity. I'm wondering if they think they're doing an internal critique of secular humanism, assuming that humanism means that more humans is better than fewer humans. Like, I just wonder if that's, if they're bringing that assumption along. But
I can tell you, I did not, I don't know if you saw what happened yesterday, and
I heard, I didn't see.
So I don't know the person. Yeah. I don't know the person. and I didn't look him up. Genuinely, Andrew and I, had a pleasant, normal conversation just prior to the debate where I was apologizing in advance if I had to leave because my medication had made my stomach act up. And what I found out afterwards is that he's defended white replacement theory and may, in fact, subscribe to some white supremacist ideas. I don't know. But even during the debate, he mentioned that the West is unable to breed at a rate that will replenish its worker force. So we're having to, it was the talking points of the white replacement thing. So he may genuinely have a view that if we just permit people to be gay, this will dramatically reduce the rate at which we're reproducing, which will dramatically impact our workforce, which we're breeding a workforce is something I've been hearing more and more in the last 3 months from people like the Speaker of the House and this person. So they may just assume fewer people is bad. I think genuinely they do think fewer people is bad.
Answers in Genesis certainly does. It's something I'm hearing from them a lot these days. So yeah. But that was actually for Nikki though. If Nikki, I know that Matt's debate opponent is not likely someone you'll be talking to, but if someone is advocating these things, ask them, what do you think secular humanism means? Because it's frustrating to have a conversation if you aren't talking about the same thing. So that's a good first question.
You mentioned Answers in Genesis, and I spoke quite a bit in the past couple of days about the new Speaker of the House here in the United States. I shared a video from oh my gosh, Mike, I'm going to butcher your last name, so I'm going to skip it. But if you go to watch the Humanist Report, Mike is phenomenal. He's one of a handful of people that I watch regularly, if not daily. Mike did a great takedown of the Speaker of the House, and I shared it. And then I took notes from it because during my opening yesterday, which was supposed to be about kind of comparing a world under Christianity versus a world under secular humanism, I talked about the things that Mike Johnson had done, and what I did at the end of that little segment is, I know what some of you are saying, he's the Speaker of the House, not the Speaker of Christianity, or that's, Mike Johnson's version of Christianity isn't my version. And I'm like, that's awesome. But what is your type? How is it better? And how do we guarantee that your type is the one that gets in there? And it turns out, and I joked, I was saying, and I don't know Andrew's version of Christianity. Andrew's version of Christianity could be better than Mike Johnson's. I'll let him, defend it. Turns out, Andrew's version of Christianity is unrecognizable to me as a former Christian, and I think it is demonstrably worse than even what I fear from Mike Johnson. But they may be on the exact same page. But Mike Johnson used to write for Answers in Genesis, which is why it was...
He did, yeah. That was bad to learn. Anyway.
All right, we've got callers. Welcome, everybody, again. As we move into... Now, I know there was a time change, and some people got here early because of it. Cool. Welcome. We're glad you're here. And it's 3:15 right now. We are going to run and stop just shy of 5 o'clock. And at 5 o'clock, you'll be able to tune in to the Sometime Show with Jimmy as a premiere episode after this is over. But we want to have conversations with you, especially if you're a theist. Theists always have priority here. And we're going to continue on with Aron in Sacramento. Pronouns are he, him. Aron's a polytheist who wants to explain why he's a polytheist. Aron, you're on with Paul and Matt. How are you?
Hi, wonderful. Matt, I thank you for what you did yesterday. I just got to say, because I'm also gay, and me and my straight brother, I'm disabled, so he cares for me, and we rescued trans youths from, poverty. And so yesterday, thank you as an ally for speaking up for us, because your integrity means a lot.
I appreciate that.
And
let's do the Sunday show, and let's get you to tell us why you're a polytheist, and why you think Paul and I should be polytheists as well.
I really don't think you guys should or shouldn't be, because part of my belief is I don't feel it's my place to push my beliefs on other people. My part of my belief is that people need to come to belief on their own. I can tell why I believe, but it may be a good reason, it may not be a good reason. I don't deny science. I accept it. I accept medicine. So I accept facts for most of the whole. Now, the reason why I believe in something, and calling it, that's what's confusing about calling it a God. I'm not really sure that it's a God in the way that a Christian would think of a God. I think it's
Aaron?
more, well, I guess we could use the word because I don't know what else to describe it.
Hey, Aaron?
But a couple of years ago, I had surgery to remove my left foot.
Volume. I'm not convinced the outgoing volume to the callers is able to break through the cell phone barriers. Aaron, when you say God, it says here you're a polytheist, which means that you should be calling to advocate for multiple gods. And yet you keep talking about
I am. I haven't gotten that far. I'm sorry.
You keep talking about a God. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to confuse. I'm just nervous.
Sure, just tell us what, by polytheism, you are convinced that there are many gods or some gods.
Yes.
Why?
I was saying that when I lost my foot, I almost died on the operating table. So during that moment, I had a vision, and some people are Kemetic, an Egyptian pagan. I happen to be one. But I wasn't until that moment, because I had a vision of Anubis saying that he would bring me back if I would walk the path of balance, so that my heart and the feather would match the scale. And I said, "Are you really Anubis?" And whatever it was said, "I am to you." So I don't know what that meant. Like I said, I don't know. I'm still confused. I'm very confused. But I took it to mean Anubis, Osiris, Bastet, Isis, Ra, the rest of them, that there may be some truth to their existence. It may not be the myths that we're told, that they may be something other than that. I don't know what they are. I don't claim, because I don't know what I saw. I don't know if it was my mind. I don't know anything. But I just believe, because it felt like I was talking to entities that were there with me. Like, it felt real, very real.
Aaron?
And yes.
How long ago did this happen?
It was 3 years ago.
Okay. And if you don't mind, how old are you?
I'm 47 years old.
So at 44, you lost a foot and had a vision. During the 44 years that preceded your amputation, how much time had you spent looking into or being involved with Anubis, Osiris, Ra, Bastet?
Oh, I can be honest, totally honest about that. I've had an interest in that ever since I used to be a Christian, but even as a Christian, I used to love to explore. I loved everything about Egypt. I loved the art. I loved the, the myths I thought were cool, that kind of thing. I thought they were interesting, more like superheroes than anything.
Yeah, cool. And I was into some of that stuff as well when I was much younger. I'm a big Moon Knight fan. I thought Moon Knight was one of the better half of the
great,
Marvel.
wasn't it? Sorry.
But here's the question, and I don't ask this to be insulting, but someone who has a fascination with a particular pantheon of gods and mythology goes through a traumatic experience where walking the path of balance now takes on a whole new meaning because they've lost a foot, and they have a vision that does not provide any evidence and even says, "I am to you." I just saw Shannon's comment and it distracted me. But that's not Shannon's fault. It's mine. Anyway, if we were to assess this, is it more probable that you actually had a vision from Anubis, or that this is what your brain probably created to provide you with something useful at a time of need?
I am open to both ideas, to be honest.
Yeah, but
I really
the
am.
The issue, the question was, what's more probable? And
More
either
probable,
answer is fine.
because,
just
like I
wanna know
say,
what
I
you
stay
think
on the side of facts. Sorry.
I just want to know which one you think is more probable.
Honestly, it might have been my own mind trying to comfort me. The logic side of my mind is telling me that.
So, how do we tell the difference between this was just your brain and this was something more than your brain?
I honestly don't know. And I'm not coming from any kind of dishonesty. I really don't know how to answer that question.
It's fine. But if you don't know, then it would seem unreasonable for you to take up one position or the other.
Yes, I can see where you're coming from.
And so, but it seems like, because you called in as a polytheist to explain why you're a polytheist, it seems like you're taking up the side that it's more probable that you had an experience with Anubis.
Well, because I have gone into, I've tried that transcendental meditation and prayer and stuff, and candle rituals and things like that, and I have seen positive changes come about since that time. And since I've seen those positive changes, I feel that something out there is looking over me. And I've also had experiences I can't explain in my life that it's so hard to become I'm so confused, Matt. I really don't know. I can't pretend to know, because I don't know. I believe in something because I believe that positivity came to me once I started believing. That's the one thing I know.
Could positivity increase through a MacGuffin, through Dumbo's magic feather, through a vision that doesn't point to reality but gave you a different perspective?
I'm open to the possibility of that. I've been struggling with this for a long time.
If you were to say right now, I don't have any good reason to believe that Anubis is real, what do you think happens?
I don't know. I can say it, but I don't know, what would happen, because I'm coming from a place of really trying to figure out where I stand. I've been so confused for so long, and there's a lot I really don't understand. I've had a lot of trauma in my life and suffered a lot of abuse.
Yeah,
and
I appreciate that.
Don't know what to do.
Have you been, or are you now getting counseling for any of the trauma?
Yes, I am.
Cool. Do you mention your Anubis views to your counselor?
I do.
And what's their take on this? I mean, I get it. Most counselors, not their job to tell you whether or not your belief's real, just like it's not my job or Paul's job to tell you whether your belief's real. I'm just wondering, when you bring it up, are they supportive of the notion? Are they in opposition to it? Are they encouraging you to continue embracing it? Are they encouraging you to explore it to see if you can find out if it's real?
Well, from my last psychologist, I'm being transferred right now. going to see my new one in a couple of days. But my last psychologist was very supportive. She said to me that faith can be important to some people and can have a positive outlook for some, and for others, it can be harmful. And she said, what does your faith tell you to do? Does it tell you to do good things or bad things? I said, never bad things. And she said, maybe it's not a harmful faith. So I don't know. It's, I think she was coming from that place that you just spoke of, that she can't tell me not to believe because reasons. But I'm actually looking for truth. I don't, it's very hard. I mean, I've talked to Aron before, back when I was deconverting from Christianity. And, I still don't know what's going on.
Let me
I
jump
think
back
there's
in.
like a conflict in my mind.
Yeah. And here's the thing. If you acknowledge that you have no way of knowing which position is correct, and you're not even sure how you're going to explore this to get an answer, then I'd suggest that perhaps you don't actually believe, but you're just open to engaging a potential possibility. If you don't think there's going to be consequences, like as long as you don't think that failing to, has Anubis or any of the other Egyptian pantheon, have they put any expectations? Have you had any interaction with them since that moment?
Nothing I would constitute as negative.
Okay, but I mean,
I've
if
had
you
no
reach
threats.
out, in your moment of need, Anubis, you had a vision that you attribute to Anubis. Since then, it hasn't happened, and since then, nobody in the Egyptian pantheon has come to you with any sort of demands or expectations or guidance. You just feel generally more positive, and you think somebody's watching, right?
Yes.
Okay. What happens if you stop, or what do you think happens if you stop believing that they're watching and just go, wow, that was an experience that made me more positive. I should stay more positive.
I'm cool with that.
I no, I'm not asking if you're cool. I'm saying, well, do you think there's something bad that would happen? By the way, do you think you can reach out to this pantheon? Like, can you ask Anubis or Ra or Bastet or anybody a question and get an answer?
Not in a physical way, but more like a path change, an opportunity. Something comes up that makes my life a little bit better.
So, Aron, you said at the start of the call you weren't sure why Matt or I should believe as you do, or why we would care. And later on, you said you're on a search for truth, and I'm not convinced that's correct. Because that is the answer as to why Matt or I are listening and so intently, and because we do want to know as many true things and as few false things as possible. I feel like maybe you're in for the true things, but you don't care if you let some false things in. But also, it sounds a little bit more to me like you're looking for something pragmatic as opposed to true. Is it? It seems like you might be on a quest for what works for you, and that's fine. But I'm wondering if you can recognize that in yourself, that you're kind of going from thing to thing, and this one worked better than that one, so that's what you're adopting, as opposed to justification for truth. You seem to acknowledge that. Does that ring true to you, that maybe you're on a pragmatic quest as opposed to a truth quest?
Like I said, I'm an honest person. So yes, Paul, I think you may be right. I think Matt's right too.
Okay. So should
you think Anubis is right?
Yeah, if it's real. What it said to me wasn't offensive or hurtful or anything like that. So
it's strange that when
it
I
helps
ask
me
you,
in a time of need.
it's strange that when I ask you if you think Anubis is right, you said, yeah, if it's real. For everything else, it's like, yes, I think this is right. And then you're like, yeah, if it's real. So if it's not real, does that mean Anubis is wrong?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to sound it like that. No. Whatever it is, I just attribute the name Anubis to it because that was the thing I saw. But like I said, it said, I am to you. I just call it by that name because that's the only name I can attribute to it. Because of what it looks like all those classic visions of Anubis, jackal-headed god, gold, and, all that stuff. So literally, I'm honestly confused. I'm not trying to deceive. I didn't call to deceive. I am literally calling because I don't know what my next step should be.
Okay. Now we've moved into a different realm because at no point did either of us remotely suggest that we thought you were calling to deceive or anything at all like that. But now you're saying it sounds like you're calling because you really want us to answer this question for you. Like you're looking for guidance of, hey, I believe this thing. Is it rational? And yet you've already acknowledged that you have no way to demonstrate it's true, which suggests that are there other things that you would say, I have no way of telling if this is true. Therefore, it's rational.
I'm sorry, Matt. I didn't quite get all the question. My phone. Could you repeat that? I apologize.
Sure. I'll try it similar, but slightly different. You're saying you're wanting guidance as to whether or not you're behaving rationally, but you've already acknowledged that if you don't have any way to confirm it's true, and therefore you probably don't actually believe, but are leaning more towards it as a useful thing. Are there other things where you would look at this and say, I don't have any way to prove that's true, but I believe it anyway?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry. Like, some of the most simple things, like, I don't think the earth is flat. I know it's round. I know it's spherical, round, whatever.
Stop,
but, I know that the universe is billions of years old.
Stop.
Oh, I'm in the wrong section. I'm sorry.
How on earth do you say, I don't believe the earth is flat as an answer to that? This is a fact about the universe that is measurable, detectable, and observable. And I was specifically asking about something that you already acknowledged is not measurable, detectable, or observable.
Oh, I misunderstood the question. Okay. Well, the Christian God, for example. Satan,
you believe in the Christian
Lucifer.
God? You believe in the Christian God?
No.
Oh my God.
It's not observable.
Aron, listen very carefully. Is there something that you cannot demonstrate as true with good evidence, and yet you believe it anyway?
Oh my God, I totally did misunderstand it. Yeah, I do believe in spirits. I believe that there's more to the physical realm than just what we can see, taste, and touch. I believe that. I can't prove it, but I believe it. Yes. I'm sorry.
Okay. So
I misunderstood.
So the
completely.
nonsense about there's more to the world than what we can see, taste, and touch is garbage language that has nothing to do with demonstrating the truth of things. Of course, there's more to the world than we can actually see, taste, and touch. But when you say there are spirits, why do you believe that?
I'm going to sound like a kook. I've had haunting experiences back when I was a kid.
Aron, if you think you're going to sound like a kook, then it sounds to me like you're already acknowledging you have no good reason to believe this, but you believe anyway, which was the question. So I'm just asking what the reason is. I don't care if it's good or not right now. I just want to know what it was.
Oh, okay. I had experiences that I contributed to that because, I just, and so it's always confused me a little bit.
Okay, Aron, I'm gonna stop here. In addition to continuing your therapy, Paul and I aren't therapists and aren't your therapist. We're also not gurus, so we're not going to be here to counsel you on what the right answer is or anything else. I'd highly recommend that you reach out to perhaps Recovering from Religion, but also it seems to me that you want affirmation and validation that it's okay to keep believing things that you acknowledge are irrational. And I'm not going to give you that, but what I will say is that if you find a belief that is irrational, and yet it seems to be helping you out in some way, making your world better in some way, what I would recommend doing is trying to find out what's actually making your world better. Because what we're talking about here is absolutely Dumbo's magic feather. Dumbo didn't need the feather to fly, but thinking that the feather worked helped him fly. And when he realized that the power wasn't in the feather, but was in him, he could fly. You need to find not your feather with Anubis to balance with, but you need to find the actual thing within you that allows you to live the better life. And if it turns out there's nothing within you and it's actually coming from Anubis, then you would need evidence that it's actually coming from Anubis to justify that. And until you have that, you can't believe it.
Thank you, Matt. You really helped me there. I am not lying. That helps a lot. I will take that
Appreciate
step.
it. Have a good time. Have a good Sunday. Thanks for calling. I think that's probably the first person I've had more than a minute's conversation with who was advocating for the Egyptian pantheon.
Oh, I suppose so. Yeah, it's often the Norse or other, or Greek, yeah.
Just for clarity, because it's going to hang out in my head, did Shannon not like Moon Knight?
It didn't stick the landing, shall we say? Marvel series rarely stick the landing. We enjoyed the build up, and the trouble was it did so well that it lets you down. So yeah.
It did not finish as strong as I wanted to, because I loved the first chunk of it.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, enough about the Marvel show. All I'm saying, it was in the top half of the Marvel shows. But
Shannon would agree with that, top half for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll figure it out. All right, we have more callers and more theistic callers, and I'm so happy about that. Let's try not to spin forever on them, but I want Tattoo Mike in Idaho is a theist, pronouncing him, wants to talk about the Hat Man. What's the Hat Man, Mike?
What is the Hat Man? That is fucking baffling. You guys don't know this. But also, Moon Knight, I agree with Screen Rant. If I could have seen what was happening in the action scenes, I would have loved it. But the Hat Man
really
goes.
This isn't place for a Marvel fight, so I'll leave that alone.
So what's the Hat Man, and how is it relevant to theism?
The dark and light balance, I guess, and the Hat Man being noted because of so many variations of, I want to say communities. I get words mixed up. Societies, I guess, theological understandings from when we helped the Laotian people and then we brought them back to the U.S. and all of a sudden they all started dying in their fucking sleep, like in a notable time while they were worried about the Hat Man and the history of the Hat Man. The Hat Man being a dark energy that looks like a man, often in a trench coat, with a hat like a fedora, like Freddy Krueger, which is where what's his face, Stephen King got it from, and I saw it twice.
Okay.
Terrifying. Once
Cool.
with red eyes.
Stop.
Don't care for that.
Stop. You're saying that this individual known as the Hat Man, that is predominantly a part of some horror fiction, you've seen in reality, and so you believe it's real?
Well, that's not the only reason, but yes.
I didn't ask anything at all about the reason yet. I didn't ask anything at all. I swear people can't hear me. I didn't ask anything at all about the reason yet. I just asked if I was correct that you believe the Hat Man is real.
I actually believe it's a species more than a person.
Okay.
Well,
what evidence? Wow. So you've seen what you think is the Hat Man.
Mm-hmm.
Describe the scenario or a scenario where you saw the Hat Man and how you've concluded that it's not, that it is in fact real and is a species.
Nice. I first saw it in the basement, where I also had sleep paralysis to some degree, which was also terrifying. Prayed to Jesus, got out of that one. Just throwing it out there because I know you like information. I appreciate that. I'm a scientist. And then the other was, God, I had to be about 15 years old in junior high and laying in bed, taking a bit of a fucking nap, and all of a sudden the Hat Man just there, and you could feel the stillness in the air, like not just there, like a few feet away to my right in the bathroom with just a silhouette and those deep red eyes. The first Hat Man didn't have the red eyes, but after I've heard about a dozen or so stories, I gather not all of them do.
Mike, do you believe in a God?
I do. It's just not
God?
Very well defined by religious texts. And I remember, being raised very Christian, like
That's
Baptist, Lutheran, Christian of Idaho.
Which God do you believe in?
Definitely not Mormon. I
didn't ask
never
which God you don't
understood
believe in.
the whole Noah thing or believing.
We're going to move on. Thanks, Mike.
I was going to ask if you heard of pareidolia, but
yeah. So
when I was a kid, I saw all kinds of crazy things in the closet. And then you turn on the lights and they're not there.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's the Sunday show. While I'm certainly interested in cryptozoology, and I guess in this case cryptoanthropology, since it's the Hat Man. If the bulk of your thing is, I saw this when I was 15, and one time it had red eyes, and another time it didn't have red eyes, and that's why, or I think that there's different ones. I need to know something. Give me something substantive other than I had a weird experience, because if genuinely you just thought you saw something, and there's nothing else to it than that, okay, if Art Bell's still around, call him. But when I follow up to say, okay, do you believe in God? Because I'm trying to figure out if your model of God is in any way normative and consistent with the Hat Man, or how you explain the existence of a species of Hat Man along with whatever God you believe in. And you are completely incapable of even beginning to describe what God you believe in and rambling about what God you don't believe in. You're not ready for the show. And so write down your thoughts and call back.
I'm guessing you don't know this, but I'm actually on a show that reviews old Art Bell episodes.
I didn't.
It's a fun show.
Hello.
Toast AM. So anyway, next caller.
James in Ontario, as a theist with pronouns he, him. Welcome to the show, James. You're on Paul and Matt. How are you?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Good.
I'm doing all right. You had a question?
That's good. Yeah, I mean, what happened at last night's debate, Matt? You kind of stormed out of there. I thought Andrew was going to do good, dude. I was waiting like 2 weeks to watch that.
Okay, so hang on. I'm going to mute you. I'm not here to talk about last night's debate. I already talked about it at the beginning of the episode, and I'll be doing a review of it later. Do you have a question that's relevant to this?
All right. Here's my question then. So why is it that secular humanists have the right to push their views onto Christians, their society, their ideals, whereas a Christian doesn't have the right to push their views on atheists or Muslims or other groups of people?
They don't. Nobody said they did.
Why push for secular humanism then?
For the same reason people push for Christianity and push for other things, because they're convinced that it's a better system. But we don't get to, your suggestion is that you seem to think that for some reason we're advocating forcing people to be secular humanists, and we're not in favor of forcing people to be Christianity. I'm not in favor of forcing anyone to be anything. Secular humanism, as I pointed out in my opening to yesterday's debate, because I'm the only one that showed up to actually discuss the subject, is not achieved by coercion, conversion, or conquest, but by data, discussion, and debate. We present compelling arguments in order to convince people to adopt a better perspective. If you want to convince people to adopt Christianity, you're free to do that. What you're not free to do is legislate that onto other people.
So can you legislate secular humanism?
No. And that's why also in my opening, if you had listened at all in my opening, I specifically included that I'm not advocating for a secular humanist government.
So isn't it kind of arbitrary in that case to be a proponent of secular humanism?
How does what I just said make secular humanism arbitrary? I'm not saying it's not. Secular humanism, whether or not somebody is a secular humanist, may or may not be arbitrary for them. But how did anything that I just said in answer to your first 2 or 3 ridiculous objections get you to isn't secular humanism just arbitrary?
Well, if it's not actually going to influence the government and how they make decisions, because you said you're not advocating for a secular humanist state.
James, I'm sorry that you're confused about this. When I say that I'm not in favor of a secular humanist government, I'm not in favor of enshrining secular humanism as the position of the government. I am in favor of a secular government, which, by the way, the United States is supposed to have.
And Canada.
All right, I got it.
Where you live.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks. All right, there we go. Those kind of things, by the way, those kind of things could have been addressed during the actual debate and during Q&A if it weren't for the case that Andrew showed up with zero intention of actually addressing the subject. And by the way, the subject was supposed to be, which is a better foundation for morality, the Bible or secular humanism, not about government.
I hope you get to use that. Actually, I hope that's a debate that happens here on this channel at some point. That'd be great with someone.
I'm pretty confident it will. There was another debate that I was going to do later this month. Where somebody, and by the way, if you're the individual who suggested this topic, I don't want to be in a position where I'm trying to poach debaters from anywhere. Go debate wherever the hell you want. If you want to debate at Modern Day Debates, that's your prerogative. I won't fucking be there. But somebody suggested we should debate, should we be an atheist? And specifically the weak atheist, soft atheist position. And James presented it to me, and I never look up my opponents, which has turned out to be a devastating error on my part, as I discovered over the last 2 weeks. And so before I will agree to anybody, I will actually go look them up so that I don't sit down with someone who is not interested in an actual debate, but is just a fascist hate monger. But it's a great discussion. And I jumped at it. I was like, yes, I will absolutely do that debate. And so if you're the one that suggested that, or if you're somebody who wants to actually debate that, you can also look out for, wow, I don't have the link. Doggone it. My producer will bang me over the head. But NBOSS, if you go to our website, there's a submission form there to apply for NBOSS. And by the way, after this next call, I'll have a bunch of announcements for upcoming shows that we'll be seeing on the network here, because the Sunday show is not the only show we do on the line. On Mondays, we have Skep Talk. On Tuesdays, we have Dying Out Loud. On Wednesdays, I do the Hang Up. On Thursdays, you got the Transatlantic Call-In Show. And Jimmy is premiering the Sometime Show at 5 p.m. in an hour and 10 minutes right here. As soon as we're done, it'll roll right into it. I don't think you have to click anything or go anywhere. You just get the awesome new show, which will then move to Tuesdays and Thursdays after this. So, and Paul is frequently on whichever ones we can get him on. Like, I need to get you back on Hang Up at some point.
And I'm a huge fan of the Sometimes Show, so that's why I jumped at this chance. I'm like, I can help make the Sometimes Show happen. I'm there.
Awesome possum. Here we go with Jerry in Ohio. Jerry's atheist pronouns are he, him, and wants to talk about observational science. So welcome, Jerry. What's up?
Thank you. I just want to say hello to everybody. The question I have for you is, these people are ghost chasers and they have these devices and everything. Do you believe those devices are real or fake?
Okay.
I mean, they're devices.
Yeah. Paul and I this is the thing. I'm definitely more of an asshole than Paul will ever be. But our brains do the same thing. We both believe those are real devices. Neither of us are convinced that those devices can detect the things that those people think they're detecting.
Okay. Because I was watching one of them, and there was some type of, they had two types of cameras. They had a regular camera, and they had a thermal camera. And there was something in that hallway, kind of looked humanoid. But what was strange is where that humanoid was, or whatever that thing was, the air was 20 degrees lower than the rest of the room.
Okay. So let's assume, now I have a thermal camera downstairs. In part because we keep reptiles. So I have a number of things to both measure and detect UVA, UVB. I have a number of temperature guns where you can just point it and the little laser thing will tell you what the temperature is. But I also have a camera which can film areas. Now, and it puts up the color spectrum image to show where the hot spots are and shows temperatures and everything else. I can say I haven't seen the specific one you're talking about, and I am not an expert on those cameras. But when you say, do I believe that those devices do what they say they do? Do I believe that they have a camera that to varying degrees accurately measures temperature in an area? Sure. What conclusion can we draw from there being a cooler spot in a thermal photograph of a hallway?
I'm not sure.
Me neither. And yet these people seem to think that they've detected a ghost. How do we know whether or not ghosts are warmer or colder, whether or not ghosts show up on thermal imaging? How do we know any of that?
That's true. That's a fair question. Here's something else that I personally experienced. 2003, I came home after work, and my brother-in-law met me at the car, and he said, "You're going to have to do something." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Your son, the youngest one, tried to kill the older son with a knife." And I said, "Well, what happened?" He says, "Well, it took all three of us to subdue him." So what I did right away is, being a Christian, I had some friends that's, I consider veterans. But what happens is they prayed over him and nothing changed because he had this extremely evil look on his face. And what happened was, so we went back home. I started looking through the Bible, looking for an answer. And the son, the oldest one, just looked at him and said, "I just wish that horrible look is off of his face." And then the next thing I know, he comes running into the room, and he stops right in front of my wife and says, "Mommy, don't let him get me." And she says, "Who gets you?" And something, I don't know how it happened, but it looked like something invisible grabbed him by the neck, raised him 1 foot up in the air and threw him 3 feet back into the wall. And then what we found, my sister-in-law, she said, there's something in this house that doesn't belong. And I said, whatever it is, find it. So she went to his room, the youngest one, and she finds a pouch. And there's a crystal in there that's lavender color. And everybody that looked at it I felt nauseous when I looked at it, and so did everybody else. So we ended up throwing that in the river, and we had no more experiences like that after that. So, I'm that's the experience I have, and I'm just still trying to, figure it out.
Okay. Are you saying you actually saw your kid levitate a foot up into the air and then launch 3 feet?
Yes, I saw it. My wife saw it, and my oldest son saw it.
Okay. How would anybody else confirm this?
Well, you mean outside? Someone outside the family?
Yeah, I mean,
because I was going.
I cannot demonstrate that you're not being honest. You may be being completely honest. You may be exaggerating a bit. You may be, only embellishing a bit. I have no way of doing it. If nobody outside has any way to confirm that this happened, what's the next step that we would do? How could we possibly investigate this? Even for those of you who saw what you say you saw, how would you investigate to find out how or why it happened?
Well, I can only tell you what I believe. I repeatedly told my son to stay out of the woods that we're close to because I was afraid of predators. But that's where he found that crystal at. And he stuck it in the house, and that's when his personality started changing. He became violent, angry, but after that night when he got thrown against the wall, he was like back to normal.
At best, that's correlation at this point. So,
okay.
Yeah. So one of the things is, I really wish you hadn't thrown the crystal away, because it seems to me that if I found a crystal and everybody who looked at it got nauseous, it would be worth taking it somewhere to get it investigated, right?
Right.
Why wouldn't you do that?
Well, I'd have to find that crystal's in a river right now. So, but I did talk
to do it the first time.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Why didn't you do it the first time?
And poison the water supply potentially.
Okay, I'm having a little trouble. You're fading in and out on me. Is that better? Can you hear me okay?
Oh, we hear you just fine. I'm saying,
okay, I can hear you.
Maybe I'm weird, but if I found a crystal in my house and everybody in my house who looked at it got nauseous, there's no way in hell I'd go throw it in a river. I'd box that sucker up and take it to somebody to investigate it, to say, why is this crystal apparently making people nauseous? Is it emitting some kind of radiation? And by the way, does it have the same effect on other people? Maybe it's not the crystal. Maybe the crystal just happened to be there and there was something else that was making you nauseous. I don't understand why people wouldn't investigate it.
Well, because, I mean, when you're in a situation like that, your adrenaline's going, and a lot of times you don't think 3D or whatever, or think outside the box. But the only thing is, I do have a friend, she's into crystals, and she told me stay away from the lavender one. She said all the other crystals are okay, but stay away from that one. And I don't know, I wish I could get her on here, but
it doesn't matter what your friend says, because in the entire history of the world, nobody has ever demonstrated that any crystal or any particular colored crystal has any sort of supernatural effect. Never. So what your friend says about the purple ones is irrelevant until they can demonstrate that there's something actually there. You know, When you ask your friend who's into crystals about crystals, that's like asking your friend who's into tarot cards what the tarot cards mean. Tarot cards are pieces of paper. They don't have any impact on anything.
I think I lost you. I think I lost your call here.
No, I'm just here. Just.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear us?
I don't know. Must be something wrong with my internet or something. But yeah, like I said, I wish I could go back in time and do that.
What's strange?
Like I said,
What's strange is while the various claims about crystals are never demonstrated or confirmed, when I Google lavender stones right now, this site says that lavender stone is a dynamic and active stone that will both calm and energize you when you need it, which is literally an incredibly stupid statement to say that it will both calm and energize you. But it says it gives off important energy that will help you make use of your imagination to the fullest. So maybe the lavender stone just made you imagine things.
That's a possibility.
No! You don't get to say that it's possible that the stone impacted your ability to imagine things. You have to demonstrate that that's a possibility. This is what we're doing. Until you demonstrate that there's some reason to think that that stone did anything, it's not a candidate explanation for anything. And you took the only physical piece of potential evidence in the entire story and threw it away.
Now, I just consider it a normal reaction because that's what I saw as the instrument of the problem. That's,
What if you're wrong? And what if you're right? I mean, if there was something in my house that was causing people to get sick, why would I go pollute the water stream, as Paul was pointing out with it? I mean, I don't know what to tell you, Jerry, other than you have no way to demonstrate any of the things you suspect to yourself or anybody else. And none of us have any ability to investigate it. You threw away the only piece of evidence that we have or would have had to support even your speculation, and no way to confirm anything else. So maybe, I guess, either hope that it never happens again, or hope that if it does happen again, you learn how to investigate better. But in the end, it just ends up being another story that I have no reason to believe is accurate.
Okay. Well, I respect that.
Okay, because it's not me. I'm not saying you're lying. I'm just saying I don't have any reason to think it's true.
That makes sense. All right. Well, I tell you what, I want to thank you for having me on your show, and I really appreciate the time being here.
And next time you're at a party, if you have both of these stories, don't open with the it was cold in part of the room story. Open with the other story.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yes, you're absolutely right. I've got all right. We have one more theistic caller that's ready for us now. And John in New Jersey, pronouns are he, him. The theist who has a question about energy. So, hey, how you doing?
Yes, I do. Man, I'm doing good. I called previously before, and just thanks you and Jim. You guys always treated me good, and the people online, all the atheists, they treat me good. So I just say thanks for that. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm not a fundamentalist. I do believe in a power greater than man. But Jim, there's one thing that all atheists believe.
Oh, no, John.
Okay.
What is it? Are you getting ready to suggest that there's one thing that all atheists believe?
Well, maybe I'm wrong. Can I rephrase that, Matt? How about scientists? Is that
no? Why do we?
Einstein.
John, stop.
Okay.
John, stop. Listen to me.
Yes.
I want you to get to your point. I want to have a discussion about it. I think that anytime somebody says there's one thing that all people believe, all atheists believe, all scientists believe, I think they're engaged in pointless hyperbole. Just get to the point and skip the pointless part.
Oh, okay.
If it turns out If it turns out that what you're saying, is genuinely something that every scientist or atheist or person believes, we'll figure that out after. If only one person believes what you're getting ready to say, I still want to know what the fuck it is. So tell me what the point is.
Okay. Well, I believe energy cannot be created or destroyed. But like, if it cannot be destroyed, do you have an idea like where it goes, like reincarnation into the earth or in another person or being? Do you believe that at all, Matt? Or
so
no.
Yeah. So the law of conservation of energy states that energy can't be created or destroyed, but it does change form.
Okay. So it could go back into the earth or into another living being. Is that
what energy are you talking about? What energy are you talking about?
Energy that keeps our body alive.
Our body produces energy from electrochemical processes.
Okay. So when we pass away, Matt,
when I die,
energy goes. Okay.
No. When I die, those processes. Listen. When I die, those processes stop, and energy is no longer generated through that process of changing form from the chemical aspect to an electro aspect to a motor aspect. Energy doesn't have to. It's almost like your understanding of energy is such that you think there's some energy thing like a spirit that keeps us moving and alive, and when we die, that spirit thing must go somewhere. That's not what's happening.
Yes.
Just like that's not at all. When my car engine is running, it's converting the potential energy in fuel through a process into mechanical energy that moves the car. When I turn the car off, the energy doesn't go anywhere. The system stops converting one form of energy to another. And so the muscle mass, the physical mass of my body and the food that I ate, that my body, when I eat food, the body takes that food and converts it so that it takes the potential energy in that food and converts it into other forms for my body to use in other areas. And when I die, that process doesn't stop immediately just because I'm dead.
No.
And the other processes don't either, because I have, shockingly, within my body, tons of other living things, lots of little microorganisms that are constantly eating parts of my skin and eating the food in me and breaking all of that down and then pooping in my eyebrows and pooping in my stomach and everywhere else. That stuff keeps going despite the fact that I'm dead.
Okay.
Which is why we decay.
But okay. All right. So the spirit does not leave. It's not energy, in your opinion.
I'm not aware of any spirit
to exist.
Those are not synonymous words, if that's the question. Energy and spirit are not synonymous words.
Okay. I think I got what you're getting at, though, Matt. I think I'm picking it up, but I can't really get anywhere with it. I just wanted to.
Have you heard the equation E equals MC squared?
Yeah, I heard that. That was an Einstein thing, right?
Yeah, and you know that E stands for energy, right?
Yes.
So go look that up. We don't need to do science lessons with Matt and I, who are not science educators. But go look that up, and you will learn what scientists talk about when they are talking about energy.
Ooh,
and yeah,
I don't want to put them under the gun, but literally tomorrow is Monday, and Monday means an episode of Skep Talk. And while I don't currently have the list, I think it's Forrest. I think I remember from Wednesday saying that Forrest was going to be hosting on Monday. And if you want to do this, call into Skep Talk tomorrow and ask Forrest if he can explain energy within a biological body and what happens to what appears to be energy when that body dies.
Okay. Well, I'm going to do that, Matt. Thank you. You did lead me in the right direction because I'm just curious about, my question being answered.
Awesome. Thanks, John.
Okay,
Thanks, John.
bro. Matt, take care of yourself. Bye-bye, Jimmy.
Bye-bye, Jimmy.
I've been called worse by better.
Oh, that's great. Somebody in chat said, bacteria don't poop. Oh, my glob. Yeah, I was talking about all the various little things, not just the bacteria. And poop was a euphemism.
Poop is, yes, colloquial at best.
Yeah. I'm not suggesting that there's bacteria that are defecating in my eyebrows, but there may be spiders and other mites and little things that do that. That do. I said do for the poop thing. So
demonetized.
Don't currently have the list. Here we go. Today, you're watching it right now. It's the Sunday show. And as soon as this is over in 48 minutes or so, by the way, we have calls remaining, but we currently don't have theist callers. So if you have theist callers, if you have something that's potentially supernatural or they're skeptical or, that we're not going to agree on, now would be a great time to get your call in because I've got a couple lines open. But we'll get to the atheist in a moment. Tomorrow will be Skep Talk with Forrest Valkai and Gordon Walker. And Forrest, sorry to throw you under the bus, but be ready to explain about the misperceptions about energy within a human body and what happens to it when that body dies. And also, I guess it's a great time to talk about the fact that death isn't as much a state as it is a process in certain models. But on the other hand, as far as I know, when you're actually dead, you're dead. Like once the process concludes.
He calls in to say matter can neither be created nor destroyed, and I bring this up, and I'm like, that should apply to the start of the universe as well, right? Like, matter can be created, should apply to the start too. Oh well,
it changes form, and actually, I realize somebody wanted to pick on me for saying poop, and that's fine. There's colloquialisms in our way of phrasing stuff, where I think I literally said something like, "Our body creates energy from the food we eat." And then I had to go back and correct it because it's not creating energy. It is converting potential energy within the food into a different form that we can use. And so this abstraction of matter and energy can't be created or destroyed. They can only change form is one aspect of the laws of thermodynamics that I knew better back when I was studying heat transfer and fluid flow. And other similar things, but Forrest would be the guy to ask. On Tuesday, you've got Dying Out Loud with Dave Warnock and Footless Joe. On Wednesdays, the Hang Up with myself and Eve Was Framed, and Takis, the Transatlantic Call-In Show, which is the best show on this network from as a completely unbiased observer who's definitely not in love with one of the hosts. I'm in love with the other one. But it's on Thursday, and it's going to actually be Aron and Katy. And so you get the OG Takis folks on Thursday. Woo. Oh, and Jimmy just let me know that I'm wrong. And that is that John Gleason will actually be on Skep Talk tomorrow instead of Forrest. So the information, I think it's going to be John Gleason.
But as an engineer, he's also pretty well versed on some of that energy stuff. So. Yeah,
I would say he's probably really well versed on some of it, but whether or not he can go through the biological process for our caller.
John, I think he needs the physics first,
man,
frankly.
John, study up and be prepared. If you're going to fill in for Forrest, you got to take the biology questions too, man. All right. Zach in Utah, pronouns he, him, has a question, an atheist caller that wants to talk about paradoxes in logic. So welcome, Zach. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thanks for taking my call. So I'm interested in your opinion on, so I've heard you talk about the basic laws of logic, including the law of excluded middle a lot.
Sure.
And I'm interested in your opinion on how paradoxes interact with that, such as, for example, this sentence is false.
Sure.
Seems to me that sentence can be neither true or false. or in
That's
some
correct.
way that it's both.
Yeah, this is really quick and easy. Paul might have an answer as good or better, but I just I literally addressed this just the other day. It's really straightforward. True and false is not a true dichotomy. True false is only a true dichotomy for statements with truth values that can be assessed. True and not true is always a true dichotomy. A and not A is a true dichotomy. True and not true is a true dichotomy. False and not false is a true dichotomy. So the liar's paradox, the one that says this sentence is false, which if you try to assess it, if it's false, then it's true. If it's true, then it's false. Oh my gosh, we're in a paradox. The correct assessment of that statement is that it is not a statement whose truth value can be assessed in a true false dynamic. So the liar's paradox, this sentence is false, is not true, and it is not false. That is the assessment. Because when we're doing the assessments, we need to look at things that's a true dichotomy. So that sentence is either true or not true. It's not true. That sentence is either false or not false. It is not false. And I know that there's a way to reword it where you kind of get around that. But that's the reason we call them paradoxes, is because these sorts of things don't fit into the box of other things, but they expose the flawed assumptions we make.
Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, it's basically just, instead of framing it as true or false, that's not the true dichotomy. It's true or not true. But being that it can be, it's not true and not false at the same time, but it's in a true dichotomy in that it's either true or not true. It's not true, and it's either false or not false. It's not false.
Correct. And the other way you can look at it is if you do a Venn diagram, the simple Venn diagram, which applies to identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle, is a single circle with an A. So there's A, and then everything outside the circle is not A. In this case, if you did it in set theory, or if Venn diagram was set theory, for statements whose truth values can't be assessed, they're either true or not true, and a completely separate circle over here that would be false or not false. And there is no overlapping between the true or false area. And so for sentences with values that can be assessed, then not true is equal to false, and not false is equal to true. But that only applies to sentences that are necessarily, wow, I'm making this harder than it was. I think stick with what I said the first time.
It's, yeah.
I wish I could draw.
I tend to get really confused really easily when it comes to, like, you make something that seems like it should be simple, and then it gets really confusing really fast with multiple different. It's easy to confuse. I mean, like, confusing true versus false as opposed to true versus not true. Kind of
maybe
things.
One way to think about it is that there are statements for which, if it is not true, that is equivalent to it being false. And there are statements like the liar's paradox that if it is not true, that is not equivalent to it being not false. And so you've got a single Venn diagram of the circle.
Gotcha. So does that, I'm just thinking of this question off the top of my head, so tell me if it's flawed in some way, but does that imply that we shouldn't think of true and false as a dichotomy in other cases, like cases where it seems like they are, but
no, you can demonstrate whether or not they are.
Okay.
So this is where we get into things when we start talking about like philosophy of science sort of stuff, where falsifiability is the cornerstone of what makes something testable within science, which means there must be some way in principle to demonstrate that it's false. If you have a proposition for which there is no in principle way to demonstrate that it's false, it doesn't have, you can't assess it.
Okay. So
otherwise, you'd be claiming to falsify the unfalsifiable. Just like saying if you try to claim that you've solved the liar's paradox, you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are problems that have solutions, and there are problems that don't have solutions, and that's a problem that doesn't have a solution.
Okay,
but
interesting. I hadn't thought of those things in the same class of problem before, but that does make sense how they are similar.
This is why in logic, there's this concept of propositional logic. And what you're doing is you make a proposition, and that's what is evaluated, not a question. So the question, does God exist, is not a proposition. And so it doesn't have a truth value, the question itself. It may have a correct answer or an incorrect answer. It may be that we don't have any way to answer it. But if you create the proposition, some God exists, that's just a statement.
Mm-hmm.
And that statement can either be true or not true. And it may be the case, we have to investigate the specifics of the content of that if the statement is not true, it is then fair to evaluate it as false.
Okay. So it's obvious that doing that in the case of the liar's paradox doesn't make sense to do. But how do we then say that it does make sense to do in the case of, because, being an atheist, I would say that I think most people on either side would probably agree with the statement that if the statement "no gods exist" is true, then it's fair to conclude that God exists is false from that.
Yes.
I guess how do we differentiate those two? Just by the the form, like the form of the statement itself, or I also don't want to get too. We've already taken probably more time than you need to on this, but it's just interesting to me, and I'm trying to wrap my mind around it.
So the statement "no gods exist," if it's true, does deductively lead to God doesn't exist, provided God is an item in the set gods. So
okay.
It could be that by God and God, because God and gods are just words right there, and we don't want to commit an equivocation fallacy by saying that they are equivalent. But if the set of gods doesn't exist, and God is a part of that set, then it also doesn't exist. That's just the basics of set theory.
Gotcha.
I assume, Zach, you've probably seen logical things written out like P. They use P and Q instead of the actual propositions. Like if P, then Q. That's very helpful in some of these situations when the language gets ambiguous. Is sometimes just, you know what, we're going to take the language out of it and we're going to call God exists, that's P, and then diagram out what I want to say, and you realize that no gods exist is not P. And, it's just sometimes that's a shorthand that helps me at least to figure this stuff out.
Yeah, you can look at it in so for example, let me change this from what you were saying about gods. If we said no cars or cars don't exist, therefore this hypothetical car does not exist. That's fine as long as this car is part of the set that we've called cars. But if instead that set refers to Cars the movie, now all of a sudden you've created an equivocation fallacy, because you're saying because the Cars as a movie doesn't exist, therefore my Chevy Silverado doesn't exist. So you want to make sure you're avoiding equivocation fallacy. So it's all about the sets. As long as the God you're talking about is part of the set of things that you've determined doesn't exist, then that God doesn't exist. Just like if there's no fairies, there are no blue fairies.
Right. Yeah. That's a good example. The Cars movie versus Cars, the set of all cars. That's interesting. And it kind of gets to, I think, the objection that people that say they're atheists bring up, where they think that the concept of God is ill-defined. I don't believe that. I would say that I'm not in. That's not a label I would use for myself, but I do understand what they're talking about when they bring that up. Is if the concept is too ill-defined, it's really hard to, determine whether a proposition about it is true.
Sure. And my only objection to atheist, which is provided by atheists, we're talking about this advocacy for theological non-cognitivism, basically that the God concept is so devoid of any content that you couldn't hold a position on it. I find that to be incredibly flawed, considering that there are billions upon billions of people currently and throughout history who do accept a God concept. And so it must contain,
right,
at some level, at least something that there's a shared comprehension of. Otherwise you wouldn't be able to, we have the God of classical theism. That isn't well defined, but it's defined enough that it is incorrect in my view to claim that it is nonsense, that it is devoid of content. It may be devoid of any evidence for it, which is something similar, but as a conceptual thing, not only can I conceive of it, I can debate it until the day I die and maybe never convince anybody. But it's not like Fergal, Burgle, Minergal, Burgle. And for the theological non-cognitivists who are saying that the God concept is nonsense, they're saying that when somebody says God, they might as well be saying blah, 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 blah. And that's clearly not true. But how much content the concept has is going to vary from concept to concept.
Sure. Okay. Well, thanks for taking the time. Sorry, I don't, that answers my question really well. So, and I'm taking too much time of the show, but, yeah,
you're
thanks
good.
again.
All right.
Thanks,
We'll
Zach.
let you go. Paul, where are you on theological non-cognitivism? Is the concept so devoid, or is it a looser middle take on it?
Well, there's a partner in my house who's fully on board with that. So we've had spirited debates. I as a former Christian, I just don't know how a former religious person can advocate that, because there was a body of people I worshipped who did have enough of a coherent notion of what we were worshiping. That again, now the problem is, of course, does it mean it's falsifiable? Because sometimes when I get into this discussion with people who hold that strongly, they want to say, well, it's not falsifiable. I'm like, well, that's a different question, I think, than whether it's coherent. So
yeah,
that's sort of where I'm at.
I've had this debate and discussion countless times over the years. And of course I'm expressing my view, although I'm happy to argue it and debate it more with other people. The thing is, the way theological non-cognitivism is presented, and I pulled this up just to verify, to make sure that I'm not misrepresenting it, is that a particular theological terminology such as God is not intelligible or meaningful, and thus sentences like God exists are cognitively meaningless, except that when you look up what we mean by intelligible, that just means that it's apprehendable by the intellect, and not merely a sense perception thing, that it is conceptualizable. Conceptualizable? That's a fucking word now, damn it. And then whether or not there's meaning, that's where we get probably to the more difficult part of it, because trying to figure out what has meaning and how much meaning there is, I think that's probably where the biggest disagreement exists between myself and non-cogs. But I'm just,
the trouble
the
is
God of classical theism. Go ahead.
The trouble is that there are millions of people in my country and your country who vote based on their concept of what God wants them to do is. So, for just as a very base example, it is a concept that has effect. Whether or not it's coherent effect, I don't see how you can deny that it has no effect. It may not have effect on the actual world, and that's a different question. Again, these are always why you want to ask someone, well, what do you mean by God? Because everyone means something different. Like the guy who's just, well, the whole universe is God, or whatever. Well, then you're coming up with the synonym for universe. So you just gotta, I don't know. It's case by case for me.
For me, I've sat in the First Baptist Church. I don't think I ever actually attended a Second Baptist Church, but I know they exist. And I've said before that even in the First Baptist Church that I attended, everybody there has a slightly, or in some cases maybe wildly, different God concept. But there are, Shannon's ready to take us both on. Not quite yet. While everybody sitting in that church has a different God concept, it doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't some shared aspect of the concept. In particular, by the time you get to the point where you're sitting in the First Baptist Church of Harvester, you have a number of different doctrinal statements about the nature of God, which are clearly intelligible and carry meaning. God is maximally powerful. We understand what God is an intelligent being that is maximally powerful. There's nothing in that sentence that is unintelligible and doesn't carry meaning. And so there's a base sentence, and that piece is at least a part of virtually every person's concept of God that's going to sit in that church. The fact that they may add more stuff to it to muddy it or confuse it, or maybe even eventually make it paradoxical, might mean that their full concept of God ultimately becomes meaningless because they've put something in there like the liar's paradox we were talking about, where this statement is false. I understand all those words. They are intelligible. They carry some meaning. And if you just said this statement, okay, I can conceptualize that. I can conceptualize that. False, I can conceptualize that. But taken as a whole, there is a paradox there. But that does not mean that there's not a concept that we can't discuss. As a matter of fact, entire books and philosophical treatises have been discussing both the concept of the sentence is false and the meta level look at paradoxes. And so when I look at what does maximally powerful entail? Which of those words do you claim is not intelligent or shit? I forgot. Meaningful, because maximally powerful merely means this being has all power that is possible. Doesn't matter that we don't know how much power that is. Doesn't matter that we can't conceptualize it. I can conceptualize. Let's just call it as strength for a second. Physical strength. I can lift a pound. I could probably lift more than that, but I know I can lift a pound. There's somebody who can lift 500 pounds. There's somebody who can maybe lift 1,000 pounds. There's probably not any human that can lift 57,000 pounds, just physically on their own. But I could imagine a being that could lift 57,000 pounds. That's conceivable. It is intelligible and it's meaningful. I can imagine a being that whatever the upper limit of what you can lift is capable of lifting that. And there's nothing about that it may not be true. It may not be demonstrable. It may have some terrible baggage, but there's nothing about it that isn't intelligible or meaningful. But anyway, we're off track, and now I'm debating Shannon, and that's never wise.
Yes, but even if you go back to just even if you just say God is the creator of the universe, right? If you have no attributes for him other than something that he did,
yeah,
just like to say, then that is incredibly. You can totally define that. Like you say, hey, I'm going to describe someone as the lead singer of the Beatles. Okay, I understand that. That doesn't a full description, but it makes sense. I can figure out what that kind of was. And so if an agent created the universe, to say that God is that agent, that seems pretty coherent to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's the fact that, and yeah, set aside the powerful thing if you want to equivocate on what does this power mean. I just went with strength as an example. The fact that we can't know what the maximal limits of an agent is, doesn't mean that we can't conceive of an agent that possesses the ability to do the maximal thing. But even if we set all that aside and go with what Paul said, this agent created the universe. And so if our only God characteristic is God created the universe, the fact that we can't comprehend what was involved in creating the universe doesn't mean that we can't comprehend God created the universe. Just like I don't know what it took. I don't know how they created the Large Hadron Collider. But my inability to know what was involved in creating the Large Hadron Collider does not in any way prevent me from conceiving of and having an intelligible, meaningful comprehension of the fact that someone created the Large Hadron Collider. But
that's what I'm saying.
We got more calls, and I want to make sure we get to these as well. Samuel in Canada is an atheist, pronouns are he, him, that has a question about meaning. So welcome to the show, Samuel.
Thank you. And I just want to say it's great to talk with you guys. I watched your videos and stuff, and it was really cool. So it's great to talk to you.
Thanks.
Sure, thanks. Welcome. How can we help?
So kind of my question is, so I'm an atheist, like you said. And so ultimately, this isn't, I don't know, like with atheism, what the view on meaning, has to be. I'm sure there's some fluidity to it. The conclusion that I've come to is that, life has no objective meaning because, there's nobody to actually give it, or at least with humans, humans have no objective meaning. And so then the opposite would be, okay, just, create your own meaning, become a musician, do something that gives you personal meaning. Maybe, have a friend, have a romantic partner sometimes, something like that. Except, like, I don't know what the objective justification. Why not, be nihilistic if that's the correct definition of it? Just be like, okay, screw the world. If there's no objective meaning to it, why bother?
Paul,
I mean, you
where
could
we
choose
meaning?
that if you could choose that if you want to. I mean, but that's absolutely a choice you can make. I guess let me step back from it. So even if God existed and told everyone what their meaning was and legitimately was the creator, is that make it an objective meaning, or is it still subjective in what God has decided?
Well, I'd say it would be subjective for him, but if he commanded us to do it, we'd have to do it, right?
Sure, but it's still subjective. Well, you wouldn't have to do it. I mean, he may have ways of coercing you to do it, but
yeah, or forcing. I'm confused.
I might have I have a different definition of objective.
Objective for me means it is not contingent on any individual agent's assessment.
Okay, so is there, and I've been looking just not much so far, but I've been looking a little bit into the idea. And do I have the correct understanding of existentialism, where it's basically you create your own meaning? And if so, do we have some sort of objective compulsion to take on that view? I think it was Sam Harris who said that morality is objective. So in that same way, is taking on meaning objective in the same way?
I have no idea. I don't even know. I'm not going to pretend that I understand existentialism or that I should give any dissertation on it. But if we're talking about meaning, then I'm just trying to understand what it is that you're struggling with on meaning, because I don't think, and I'm going to divide it into a couple categories. Is there intrinsic meaning in anything? And I don't think there is. I think meaning is something we imbue as a character. To me, it seems that value is clearly subjective, because there has to be a subject that does the valuing. And since meaning to me seems to be contingent on value, that makes it subjective. But what we often talk about is somebody's like, I don't know what's going on in the background, but
if you could hit mute for
getting
a while,
really
Sam.
weird noise. I'm just gonna mute you for a second and then I'll get back. So a lot of times people conflate meaning and purpose. Now, purpose, I'm just going to set aside as something different, because purpose is more of an ought. What is your life supposed to be about? And you can have either an externally imposed purpose or an internally imposed purpose. For some reason, theists often decry atheism as if it's purposeless because there isn't an externally imposed purpose. And my response to that is good. I don't want God or government telling me what my purpose of my life is. I like the fact that I get to decide what the purpose and goals of my life are. When it comes to meaning, to me, as I was saying, that's contingent on value. And value is a subjective assessment. If I got a $20 bill, what does it mean? I don't know. What is its value? We have a shared understanding of its value because we've constructed that. In the end, it's just a piece of, fabric with stuff on it. But this $20 bill, sorry, it's not fabric in Canada. It's some kind of plastic shit that you can't tear up and ruins all my magic tricks. I can't do shit anymore in Canada. But it has a value. But that value is us saying this particular piece of fabric or paper or plastic is different from this one for these reasons, and we're going to put this value on it. But meaning is one, I don't know what difference it would make if my life had a meaning that was objective versus a meaning that was subjective. And it's meaning to whom, for whom, which I don't know how to look at it in a way that's not subjective. So can we, what is your meaning, or what do you mean by meaning for this purpose, for this discussion?
So I guess with meaning, it'd be almost kind of like, Captain America, for country. And it's just, I don't need a reason to defend America. I'm just going to because that's the way it is, kind of thing. And like, almost like the opposite would be, say, so I want to go into the film industry and stuff. And I look at this industry and I go, okay, let's just say maybe I become the next Steven Spielberg or something. But ultimately, I'm going to be forgotten. Jesus is going to be forgotten, even though he's created one, or his followers have created one of the most secure creations that a human can, namely a religion. Even religions, go the way of the Western or whatever. They go, they're here today, gone tomorrow. So nothing that I do will ultimately have an impact. So why not just sit in my couch in my pajamas and complain all day? Why not do that? Because they're essentially the same thing as far as effect goes.
Why would you think that nothing you do has an impact? Everything I do has an impact on something. That's the dynamic nature of the universe. I ate a Tums earlier. That's going to have an impact on my stomach, which is going to have an impact on my mood, which is going to have an impact on what I do the rest of the day. Is your concern that because eventually I will cease to exist, everything I did will not matter someday?
Yeah,
okay.
Even if you have to trace it, far forward to the heat death of the universe or something, ultimately everything's going to go.
Now I get it. Someday, my pickup truck, which I really like, and I just spent a bunch of money getting the transmission fixed, so I like it even more, although I'm mad at it. Someday, that truck will sit in essentially probably a junkyard, wasting away. It will no longer be drivable. Its parts will decay. At that point, no longer has any purpose or value or meaning that I can assess. But it absolutely has purpose and meaning and value now. The fact that it does not last forever actually increases its value. That's the rarity of something, the scarcity of something is what increases its value for us. The gold has value, well, not necessarily just based on its rarity, because there's market manipulation and other stuff, and we like things that are pretty. But by and large, if there's sand does not have the same value as diamonds, despite the fact that sand is more useful. Sand is undeniably more useful than diamonds. Now, granted, you could, for example, line your aquarium with diamonds and get a roughly equivalent use out of it. You could fill a sandbag with diamonds and maybe get a similar thing. But if let's just assume that I'm correct, if sand is more valuable or more useful and it's more plentiful, why isn't it more valuable? It's the rarity of things. If life lasted forever, how much would each individual day matter? But if you have 6 months to live versus 60 years to live, how valuable are each of those days in that 6 month versus 60 day period? It's rarity. I mean, this is market economics, supply and demand. This is just the way it works. By the way, as a reminder, to watch Dying Out Loud on Tuesday with Dave Warnock and Phyllis Joe to talk a little bit about the value of this. But this concept that because something ends and will someday no longer be of value to someone is just a fact. But that doesn't have any bearing on how much value it has right now. And also, it's the situation that determines it. How much is a cup of water versus a cup of champagne? How much is a cup of water if you're in the middle of a desert and there's exactly one cup that 700 people want?
Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're basically if I'm understanding you correctly, you're basically saying, as far as the I'm sorry, was somebody talking?
Nope.
Nope.
Okay, I was probably just hearing my own voice over there, whatever. But anyway, so if this were to apply, say, on a personal level, it's kind of just forget about, affecting future generations or something, maybe try and affect the people around you. Is that kind of how it would translate into personal?
I don't think so. I think what we're trying to say is that Matt was obviously trying to say that infinite things aren't necessary for things to be valuable, and that's very important. Also, in terms of what you should do, like we're actually, Matt avoided the whole ought is kind of a thing, or ought if. We're not saying there's oughts unless you have an if. Now, if you want, it sounds like in this conversation you're looking for a way to have impact. So if you want to make an impact, then there are some then you can start evaluating your actions against whether you are having impact and which actions you make will have the most impact. So sitting on your couch isn't necessarily a great way to have impact on a large group of people if that is your goal. And in terms of impacting future generations, that seems like a laudable goal, a way to impact even more people. Again, if the goal you're looking for is impact. What we're saying, a roundabout way, was there's no reason you need to pick impact on society as your goal. You may have a goal of comfort. You may have a goal of personal fulfillment. There's lots of different goals you could subjectively choose. But it sounds like in these conversations, you want to maximize impact. And then you can really start comparing, sort of like Matt was talking about before with secular humanism. When you share a goal, when you agree to what the scorecard is, then you can start comparing tactics, as it were, to see which is going to be better. So no, I mean, being a filmmaker is obviously, I worked for a filmmaker for a long time. There's that impact. The impact was to millions of people because millions of people saw the movies and were entertained by those things. So there's a broad impact there. But is that better or worse than someone who devoted their life to working in a soup kitchen at their local place, and they literally were feeding dozens of people a day, but they were giving them actual life as opposed to entertainment? These are some of those grand questions that it's fun to wrestle with. But what you've done already now is you've come to that idea of, well, let's talk about impact. And the fact that you've subjectively done that, you need to come to grips with the idea that that was a subjective choice you made. But if the people you're talking to agree to that subjective choice, then you can start keeping score. Does that make sense?
Okay, so I think I get this. I think I get this as far as like an objective standpoint. But as far as it comes to subjectively, if I'm understanding evolution and so forth, we've evolved to have, to not want to die, and I think, maybe that's why we want to live forever or whatever. So is almost having like an existential crisis where you're going, oh crap, I'm, even if all it comes down to is like the heat death of the universe and everything I've done will be destroyed. Is that just something that needs to be ignored and resisted, or what?
Well, we're not therapists. I wouldn't recommend that people ignore their existential questions. But ultimately, again, going back to a previous caller, do we care about what works, or do we care about what's true? And if we care about what's true, sometimes that leads to a different set of situations than what's happening there. I think some of our existential dread is, obviously, you can relate it to fear of death, and you can relate it to a lot of those things. I lost the steam of my thought. Matt, go ahead.
No, it's none of these things are anything that I don't know what to add, because there's this distinction between meaning and purpose. At the end of the day, I don't think that there's any. I don't think there is an externally imposed purpose, nor do I personally want there to be. But if there is one, whether I want to or not, I don't have any control over it. I'd like for somebody to show me what it is. But the mere fact that something ends doesn't mean it doesn't have value now. And the proof of that is, have you ever been really hungry? That food that you eat that sates your hunger will turn into poop, and you will be hungry again at some later interval. Does that mean that the meal you ate was devoid of value because it didn't last? It has value in the time that it lasts. It's like people saying that life just isn't as good if there's not a reward at the end of it. Life is the reward. Right here, right now, it has value to me now. Whether or not it has value to somebody else in a million years, how could value, if something has no value to somebody else in a million years, how does that change what its value is to me right now?
Again, drawing on your example of like the food, I guess it wouldn't really have much of it.
Yeah. I think that some people are looking for a meaning or purpose. I think religions have poisoned the conversation on this by suggesting that if something doesn't last forever, it's less valuable, or it's not valuable. The fact that it might not have value in the future means that it doesn't have value now. And I'm just baffled, because for people who are starving, the food that we throw away because it doesn't have value for us because we're already fucking full has immense value for them. And to suggest that it loses all value because it doesn't have value to someone forever, it's just bizarre to me. I don't even know how else to address it.
Well, thank you very much for taking my call. You've been really helpful.
Sure. Thanks. Appreciate it, Samuel.
Thanks, Samuel.
On a side note, This is only to mildly start a potential fight later, and not a fight for you. I'm deflecting for you. We go back a second. Merely being able to ask, how powerful is your proposed God, means that the proposed God is not unintelligible or unmeaningful. To begin to ask questions for clarity already demonstrates that it is not a nonsense topic, just that it's not completely understood. Just like saying, how fast can humans run, doesn't mean fastest human is a concept devoid of meaning. We understand the concept fastest human, even if we don't know the precise speed at which the fastest human can run.
Well, I appreciate that.
It's not fair because she's not actually in here where she can beat me up. But Siva in Barcelona, we only have a couple of minutes left, and you have what I think may be an incredibly complex question, but I'd like to give you the chance to answer it, and then we can either try and address it at a later time, point you to some resource, or you can hold off and call back another time. I just didn't want you to have to, having sat there for a while and not at least get to ask your question if you wanted to. So welcome to the show.
Hello, Matt. Hello, Paul. Can you hear me well?
Yes,
we can.
Great. So yeah, I will try to make it short then if I don't have a lot of time. So yeah, I'm an atheist, and the first time I encountered this question was when I was a teenager, and I talked with my friend, and he is not an atheist, and he is a theist, he is a Christian, and he actually asked me, so what about morality, and why don't you, do anything you want, and why there is a stopper for you to do something bad, and why do you prefer to do something good, and so on. And during that time, that was the first time I heard that. For me, that was a baffling question, because I actually couldn't understand where he was coming from, because for me, that was something, that I didn't give a lot of thought at the moment, but still something natural, and not just in the meaning of it came to me easy, but in the meaning it had a natural origin to it. And what I can see in this topic discussion is this divide between, we understand that this is natural behavior, so the origin is probably natural, and we can kind of,
I gotta stop you, Siva. I gotta stop you. You're gonna have to call me back on Wednesday or back next Sunday, because we didn't quite get to the question. The origin of morality, or the source of morality, may not in fact matter, but if you look at the principles behind secular humanism, what you have there is that morality is derived from the needs and desires of human beings, and an evaluation of the consequences of our actions with respect to the goal. And so if we're going to have a discussion about what the goal should be, we'll have to do that another time, because I got to turn the show over to Jimmy's new first episode. Thanks so much, Steve. Call us back. Jimmy's first episode of the Sometimes Show. Again, the return of the Sunshine Show. The Sometimes Show is on. It's going to be on like right now. Like, we got to roll credits. Like, go.
Oh shit! Sorry, I didn't know you were just gonna go right there. Fuck.
I went with the clock. Thanks to everybody who moderated and our crew here doing wonderful stuff. And to all of you who support us on Patreon, if you'd like to continue supporting things and watch all the other shows in the line, which includes the Sometimes Show, which is starting as soon as these credits are done rolling, you can also go to patreon.com.